Here's a rare story about an extraordinary night in Heo, China, that would shake up one of the country's busiest airports. On July 7, 2010, Xiaoshan International Airport buzzed with typical evening activity. Families waited, business travelers hurried, and airline crews prepared for late-night routes to Beijing. The terminal hummed with routine energy, luggage rolling across polished floors, and departure boards flickering overhead. But something unusual was about to unfold. Air traffic controllers first noticed an odd radar return in the approach corridor, initially dismissing it as interference or a weather anomaly. However, the signal grew stronger, moving steadily across restricted airspace. Pilots on at least 2 flights soon confirmed something strange was happening. One crew described a golden, cigar-shaped light with a shimmering haze. Another compared it to an impossibly large and steady hovering lantern. This unidentified object wasn't following standard flight paths and broadcast no identification code. Safety protocols demanded immediate action. Controllers declared a temporary airport closure. Incoming flights were diverted to nearby airports like Ningbo and Wuxi. Planes already on the taxiway were ordered back to gates. Passengers received only vague announcements about operational issues. For nearly an hour, the mysterious object lingered in restricted airspace. Closing an international airport isn't a decision taken lightly in China. The impact rippled across the national air traffic network, with dozens of flights delayed or rerouted. Thousands of passengers found their travel plans suddenly disrupted. Meanwhile, in the suburbs around Hangzhou, ordinary citizens began reporting their own observations of the night's extraordinary events. The incident at Heo would become another intriguing chapter in unexplained aerial encounters. Mysterious glowing objects slowly moving across the night sky caught widespread attention. Eyewitnesses described a luminous body that seemed to hover with controlled precision, not like a typical rocket trajectory. Blurry photographs emerged online within hours, showing a streak of light with a hazy aura. Taxi drivers near the airport reported traffic grinding to a halt as people stopped their vehicles to watch. Farmers on the outskirts claimed the object remained silent, with some noting its glow pulsed and changed intensity. By the next morning, headlines blared across Chinese news outlets. UFO shuts down Xiaoshan Airport. A rare use of the term UFO in state media that drew global attention. International news networks like CNN, BBC, and Reuters quickly picked up the story, calling it one of the most dramatic aviation-related UFO incidents of the decade. Yet, the narrative changed rapidly. Within days, Chinese media coverage shifted dramatically. Official statements began framing the airport closure as a precautionary measure, suggesting possible military activities. Online forums where photographs had been shared saw posts disappearing. The story transformed from a sensational international incident to a muted local event. While abroad, it remained a fascinating UFO story. At home, it faded into silence. The Civil Aviation Administration of China initially claimed ignorance, citing only security reasons for the closure. Later speculation emerged linking the object to military tests. Analysts outside China noted the People's Liberation Army's history of conducting secret missile and aircraft trials in the region. Alternative theories proposed a private jet without clearance, but this explanation seemed implausible. China's tight aviation regulations and the scale of the airport shutdown suggested something more significant. Anonymous sources mentioned radar returns indicating an object far larger than a small aircraft. The Hangzhou incident stands out for 2 critical reasons. Most notably, a major international airport was shut down for nearly an hour due to an unidentified object. Aviation authorities treat safety as paramount, and such closures are reserved only for severe threats like major storms or significant accidents. Civilian airport staff reportedly signed non-disclosure agreements. The aviation authority maintained silence, while foreign researchers noted that closing an airport at peak hours, costing millions in delays and diversions, was unlikely triggered by anything mundane. The Xiaoshan shutdown occurred during a period of rising interest in aerial anomalies across Asia. In the same decade, reports emerged from India's Leh region of glowing objects near the Himalayas and from Thailand of luminous orbs. Unlike isolated rural sightings, the Hung case unfolded at the intersection of civilian aviation, international travel, and state secrecy. Initially, Chinese state media briefly labeled the object a UFO before retracting the statement. Several photographs remain in circulation today. One shows a glowing object with a radiant tail appearing like a luminous comet. Skeptics argue the images were long-exposure shots of airplanes. Yet, when matched with flight schedules and angles of approach, inconsistencies remain. Other images suggest a structured craft emitting beams, though clarity is low. Despite the proliferation of mobile phones, few high-quality videos surfaced, fueling suspicion that stronger evidence was collected but withheld. Neither natural phenomena nor known aircraft fully account for the duration, visual characteristics, and radar presence. International UFO researchers continue to cite the case as one of the most credible mass disruptions caused by an unknown aerial object in modern history. It demonstrated how, even in the 21st century, unidentified aerial phenomena could bring an entire airport to a halt. To this day, the Hoshaosan Airport UFO serves as a reminder of the fragile line between the ordinary and the unexplained. Thousands of travelers experienced only frustration that night, stranded in terminals or diverted to distant cities. Yet behind their delays lay a deeper question. What object had crossed into restricted skies with enough presence to shut down a major hub? In the silence that followed, no clear answer came. Instead, only photographs, fragments of testimony, and a brief flare of media honesty remain. The traces of an event China preferred to conceal lingered an unresolved mystery. In the low foothills of the eastern Himalayas, the town of Siliguri in West Bengal settled into a typical autumn evening. Farmers were heading home, and the sun had just dipped behind jagged ridges. Hillside villages flickered with lights, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and tea leaves. A region sitting at the edge of India's vast tea plantations, what unfolded next would become one of India's strangest mass sightings. It began with plantation workers noticing an unusual glow in the northern sky. At first, they thought it might be a bright planet like Venus or Jupiter, which often linger in autumn evenings. But this glow was different, too intense and too near, moving in deliberate ways that didn't match natural celestial objects. Soon, neighbors were called out to witness the phenomenon. Within minutes, dozens of people stood in the cool grass, staring upward at a brilliant orb. Golden white in color, the object radiated a haze that seemed to distort the surrounding air. Unlike aircraft, it made no sound and showed no navigation lights. Villagers estimated it hovered a few hundred meters above ground, clearly visible against a darkening sky. For nearly 20 minutes, the object shifted slightly, as though under intelligent control. At one point, smaller lights appeared to separate from the main body, moving in quick arcs before rejoining the central glow. Witnesses insisted these were not stars or lanterns, but movements too purposeful to be natural. Panic began to ripple through the community. Some families gathered their children indoors, shutting doors as if protecting against an intruder. Others remained outside, transfixed. An elderly farmer reportedly tried to light incense, believing it a divine sign. Younger onlookers whispered about foreign aircraft or supernatural possibilities. The strange light quickly captured the town's attention. Shopkeepers closing their shutters paused to look skyward. Commuters on scooters slowed or stopped entirely, some abandoning their rides to watch the extraordinary scene unfolding above the tea fields of Siliguri. The strange event was witnessed by many across the region. Local tea workers and villagers described a bright orb that hovered silently for nearly half an hour, breaking into smaller lights before vanishing without a trace. Newspapers in Bengali carried short articles about the mysterious phenomenon. Regional television briefly interviewed visibly shaken witnesses. Despite initial local coverage, the story quickly faded from national news, buried under political and economic reporting. Witnesses provided consistent accounts. Several villagers told reporters the orb descended toward the tea fields, casting a golden glow on the leaves. The smaller lights appeared to dart across the ground in quick, searching patterns. When the main object finally disappeared, it shot skyward with sudden speed, leaving only silence behind. Local police arrived after the event had concluded. Officers admitted seeing a faint glow but could offer no detailed explanation. The station log simply noted strange lights reported by citizens with no follow-up investigation. Multiple theories emerged to explain the incident. Some suggested ball lightning, but this explanation fell short. Ball lightning typically lasts only seconds and doesn't divide into independent moving lights. Others proposed a misidentified helicopter or drone, A 2007-era drone technology in India was limited. Villagers noted the complete absence of rotor noise that would accompany an aircraft. Given Siliguri's location near the northern frontier and the strategic Siliguri corridor, some military analysts speculated about potential cross-border activity. Unusual lights near the border had been noted before, possibly linked to foreign aircraft. However, no official from the Indian Air Force or Meteorological Department stepped forward with a definitive explanation. For those who witnessed the event, the memory remained vivid. The mysterious lights continued to spark conversation and speculation, despite the lack of official acknowledgement. Here's the rewritten script. In the early years, no official record captured the events at Siliguri. Dozens of witnesses from different walks of life, workers, farmers, shopkeepers, and commuters, shared an extraordinary experience that defied conventional explanation. Unlike typical UFO reports, this wasn't a solitary account or a questionable photograph, but a collective observation that happened simultaneously. The sighting's significance lies in its communal nature. While mass UFO encounters are uncommon, this event stood out for its shared details. Witnesses consistently described a silent, hovering object that didn't behave like any known aircraft. Years later, the incident remains preserved mostly through regional stories and scattered references in Indian UFO research circles. Some researchers consider it one of the most important modern sightings in eastern India, drawing comparisons to mysterious glowing objects reported by Indian Army patrols in Ladakh during the same era. Others view it as another unsolved mystery forgotten by officials but kept alive in local memory. Today, villagers still recount that night with vivid clarity. They speak of a quiet awe, of children clinging to their parents, and a strange beauty as a glowing orb illuminated the plantations. Time seemed to slow as neighbors stood together, witnessing something beyond comprehension, watching the object vanish as quickly as it appeared. For those who experienced it, this wasn't just a light in the sky. It was a moment when the boundaries of everyday life, farming routines, traffic, daily struggles were unexpectedly pierced by something unknown. No military explanation or scientific theory has fully resolved the incident. Instead, the event remains an open question, a reminder that even in our world of crowded skies and advanced technology, mystery can still quietly descend over a small town, leaving people looking up in wonder. In 2004, a similar unexplained phenomenon occurred in Cebu, Philippines. During a routine school morning with children gathered in a courtyard and teachers organizing assembly, something extraordinary happened. Against a clear, pale blue tropical sky, hundreds of witnesses, both young and old, observed an inexplicable event that began with a sudden shimmer, a bright glint that would challenge their understanding of the ordinary. High in the sky, something gleamed like sunlight, catching on glass. Shouts from students broke the assembly's rhythm as they pointed upward. Initially, teachers tried to quiet the children, dismissing the object as an airplane or balloon. But as more eyes tracked its path, the atmosphere transformed. A glowing sphere hung suspended above the schoolyard, bright enough to stand out even in full daylight. Witnesses called it a fireball, yet unlike any meteor they recognized. The object hovered motionlessly, pulsing with a golden-white glow. A faint haze seemed to ripple around its edges, as if heat distorted the surrounding air. Unlike typical meteors that flash and vanish, this object lingered for extended periods. Some teachers later told reporters they felt the sphere was deliberately observing the crowd below. Panic erupted among the children. Dozens screamed and scattered, some running toward classrooms, others clinging to their teachers. Adults, though visibly unnerved, remained transfixed. Several witnesses reported the sphere descending to a few hundred meters above ground, then stopping abruptly, as if under precise control. No sound emerged, no engine roar, no thunder crack, only silence, punctuated by children's frightened cries. Older students later claimed the object emitted light rays, almost like fans spreading across the sky before retracting. Whether actual projections or mere light tricks remained unclear. What stood out was the object's unnatural movement, shifting side to side in sharp, deliberate motions rather than drifting. After hovering for several minutes, it accelerated upward instantaneously, vanishing into the sky's brightness. The event wasn't limited to the schoolyard. Residents across surrounding neighborhoods reported the same phenomenon. Local shopkeepers, GP drivers, and office workers described a glowing ball above the town that morning. Some spotted it en route to work. Others saw it from fields surrounding Cebu City. For a brief window, hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people shared this bewildering sight. News spread rapidly. Local radio stations fielded calls from listeners describing their experiences. Regional newspapers ultimately characterized the incident as a daylight fireball. Not a many, and officials struggled to explain the incident. Explanations like meteor showers or weather balloons fell short of witness descriptions. Meteors flash briefly and travel in arcs, while these accounts spoke of an object hovering silently. Weather balloons move with wind patterns, not darting sideways or shooting upward at impossible speeds. School teachers, respected community members, publicly challenged these initial theories. One teacher vividly described standing in the courtyard, watching a sphere hovering above children, certain it was controlled rather than random. Parents, hearing their children's panicked accounts, demanded answers. Yet no government investigation materialized. As the story spread beyond Cebu, it gradually transformed into rumor. National media coverage remained cautious, labeling it an unconfirmed aerial sighting. Mobile phone cameras were rare then, leaving no photographic evidence. Skeptics easily dismissed the accounts as exaggeration. However, the consistency across dozens of children's and adults' testimonies gave the event significant credibility. Years later, UFO researchers in the Philippines gathered detailed accounts. Many recalled the emotional intensity, the fear, awe, and profound sense of vulnerability under an unknown presence. Now grown students still spoke of the memory's vividness. For them, it remained a defining childhood moment that defied mundane explanations. The Cebu fireball aligned with a broader pattern of daylight UFO sightings across Southeast Asia. In the early 2000s, luminous spheres were reported over populated areas in Indonesia and Thailand. Unlike night sightings, these daylight observations carried more weight. Objects were clearly visible against the sky, impossible to confuse with stars or distant aircraft lights. The incident's scale made it particularly compelling. While a single witness might be mistaken, an entire schoolyard and city residents reporting the same hovering object created a testimony difficult to ignore. In the years following the sighting, the lack of official explanation remains one of the most puzzling aspects of this event. Despite the numerous witnesses present that day, no formal inquiry or radar verification emerged to shed light on what occurred. The children who were present that morning carry a vivid memory, a glowing sphere descending in complete silence, holding them captive between fear and wonder before vanishing into the sky. For teachers, it was a moment of profound uncertainty, forced to confront something inexplicable while facing the curious and anxious faces of their students. The wider community gradually transformed the event into local folklore, recounting the tale at gatherings and passing the story down through generations. The fireball over Cebu defied conventional explanation. Unlike a meteor, which burns quickly and loudly, or a balloon, which drifts predictably, this object moved with an unsettling precision that suggested deliberate control. Its appearance was brief, but remarkable. The object revealed just enough to be seen, yet withheld any definitive explanation. Its silence was as mysterious as its presence, leaving witnesses with more questions than answers. Today, the Cebu fireball stands as one of the most compelling mass sightings in the Philippines. It is not a story told through a single account, but through the interconnected memories of hundreds of witnesses. While officials turned away, those who witnessed the event remember vividly. Against the clear tropical sky, a sphere of light emerged and then vanished, leaving behind only unanswered questions. In January 2011, a similar mysterious event unfolded in the rice fields near Yogyakarta, central Java. This landscape, typically characterized by its ancient rhythms of farming and daily life, was disrupted by an extraordinary occurrence. Farmers tending their crops and children running along narrow paths between paddies were suddenly confronted with an unexplained phenomenon. The night before, residents of Sleman district had reported unusual lights in the sky. Witnesses described glowing orbs hovering low above the fields, moving silently before disappearing. Some believed they were lanterns, while others were not so sure. The following morning, villagers discovered a perfect geometric circle pressed into the green expanse of rice fields, a formation too precise to be attributed to natural causes. The incident added another layer to the growing collection of unexplained aerial phenomena, challenging our understanding of what might be possible. Not dawn, something extraordinary emerged in a local rice field. A sprawling circle, nearly 70 meters across, lay perfectly imprinted among the stalks. Its design was unlike anything natural. A floral geometric pattern of astonishing symmetry. Farmers stood transfixed at the field's edge, their disbelief palpable. Children darted through the intricate design, tracing its elaborate edges. Word spread quickly to Yogyakarta, and journalists arrived with cameras, capturing aerial images that soon appeared in Indonesian newspapers. The pattern echoed famous crop circles documented in England, precise, geometric, executed with uncanny skill. For local residents, this discovery carried profound cultural significance. In Javanese tradition, rice fields are sacred spaces connected to Diri, the fertility goddess. An overnight imprint felt both ominous and divine. Reactions varied. Some villagers saw a celestial message, while others perceived a disturbing intrusion into nature's delicate balance. Authorities responded immediately. Police cordoned the area, controlling the growing crowds, while scientists from Gajah Mada University began investigating. Botanists carefully examined the stalks, noting they were bent rather than broken, suggesting exposure to intense heat or pressure. Some appeared slightly scorched at the base. Meteorologists definitively ruled out natural phenomena. No storm or wind could have created such a formation. Local officials remained cautious. The district chief labeled it a mystery, refusing further speculation. Police worked to quell swirling rumors about UFOs, military experiments, or elaborate hoaxes, yet the design's complexity and the absence of tracks challenged such explanations. By the second day, the site had transformed into a pilgrimage. Thousands visited, some offering prayers, others capturing photographs. Vendors appeared along nearby roads, turning the mysterious event into a local spectacle. The crowds grew so large that farmers feared damage to surrounding crops, prompting additional police barriers. The formation remained an enigma, a perfect, inexplicable pattern that defied conventional understanding, nestled quietly in the heart of a peaceful rice field. The West Java rice field circle became a landmark moment in Southeast Asia's crop circle history, drawing global attention and speculation. Unlike the well-known formations in Wiltshire, England, this incident felt different, more mysterious and unexpected. Villagers in Sleman described an extraordinary night when strange lights appeared in the sky. Around 10 p.m., multiple witnesses reported seeing silent orbs hovering above the fields. One farmer even mentioned a sudden flash of light, reminiscent of lightning, though no storm clouds were present. The next morning, a complex geometric design was discovered in the sacred rice fields. Scientists from Gajah Mada University conducted preliminary investigations, noting unusual characteristics. The rice stalks were bent at strange angles, with slight discoloration at their bases suggesting exposure to an intense energy burst. Researchers struggled to explain the formation. They ruled out mechanical flattening since no tracks, boards, or entry points were found in the surrounding mud. Government officials attempted to downplay the incident, suggesting it was human-made, yet offering no concrete evidence to support their claim. UFO researchers found the timing intriguing. The reported aerial lights seemed to align with theories about unidentified craft creating field impressions. Skeptics countered with claims of an elaborate hoax, though locals were skeptical that anyone could have created such a complex design without being noticed. Reuters and other media outlets published images of the formation, which quickly circulated online. The incident sparked international curiosity and debate about the origins of such mysterious field patterns. Within weeks, the story faded from national headlines, but for the people of Sleman, the memory remained vivid. Farmers continued to discuss the night the lights appeared and the inexplicable design left in their fields, a moment that connected local traditions with a global mystery of geometric field formations. West Java, 1999, a rice field became the site of a baffling event. Crop circles have long captured people's imaginations, but his particular incident stood out distinctly. Villagers discovered a precise, flawless geometric pair pressed into a sacred rice field overnight. Eyewitness accounts spoke of strange lights and an eerily perfect design. No foolproof explanation could fully address the circle's mysterious origins. Even if someone had attempted a hoax, the operation would have demanded incredible precision and secrecy in a small rural community, where rumors spread quickly. For those who saw the circle, the effect was mesmerizing. I seemed as if something had descended, carefully pressed a message into he ground, and hen vanished without a race. While he villagers might no have understood he, meaning, hey, all recognized something extraordinary had occurred. More than a decade later, photographs of his crop circle continue to fascinate researchers and believers. I has become part of Indonesia's growing collection of unexplained phenomena, alongside tales of glowing orbs in mountainous regions and volcano-adjacent sightings. In his same year, Anoher mysterious even unfolded at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. On a clear evening, air traffic controllers encountered an unidentified object crossing airspace. Radar operators initially hoped I might be a technical error, but multiple confirmations proved otherwise. A silent intruder moved across the approach corridor, defying explanation. The facility, less than a year old and symbolizing Malaysia's technological advancement, suddenly found itself at the center of an inexplicable occurrence. What remained from he West Java crop circle was ultimately he memory. He circle withered as he rice grew, he field was harvested. By he impression of high nigh lingered. No official dismissal could erase he quiet sense of wonder I inspired. No pilots inbound from various routes started reporting an unusual sighting above the horizon. Multiple commercial aircraft radioed in about a strange aerial phenomenon. One captain described a glowing disc-like object, bright enough to stand out against the day's fading light. A second pilot corroborated the first report, noting a luminous oval with a pale halo. Unlike typical aircraft, this object moved without standard navigation lights or flashing beacons. At that altitude, airplanes usually have clear transponder signals and recognizable strobe patterns. But this one was different. Air traffic controllers immediately took precautionary measures. They diverted 2 flights away from the corridor, concerned about the object's erratic movement. Within minutes, the contact appeared to shift direction in a way no conventional aircraft could manage at such speed and altitude. Pilot reports suggested the object was metallic, catching the sun's last rays while emitting a faint glow. It left no contrail, produced no sound, and seemed to defy normal aviation expectations. Control tower supervisors quickly reached out to the Malaysian Air Force for guidance. Scramble orders were reportedly prepared, though the details remain unclear. Some accounts claim jets were dispatched but failed to intercept the object before it vanished. Other reports suggest the military simply monitored the incident remotely, reluctant to engage directly. The mysterious blip lingered on civilian radar for nearly 30 minutes before accelerating out of range at an extraordinary speed. On the ground, most passengers remained unaware of the unfolding events. Delay announcements used vague traffic management language, but rumors spread among airport staff. That night, local residents near the airport claimed to have seen a strange, silent, glowing light moving across the sky, far brighter than any conventional aircraft. The next morning, local newspapers carried brief reports of an unidentified aerial phenomenon that caused temporary disruptions at Kuala Lumpur International. Regional media outlets quickly picked up the story, especially after 2 independent pilot confirmations. Officials moved swiftly to manage the narrative, but the implications were clear. Something unexplained had traversed Malaysia's busiest airspace. The Kuala Lumpur airport incident challenged everything aviation professionals thought they understood about aerial incidents. Multiple witnesses, including professional radar operators, pilots and controllers, reported an unidentified object that defied conventional explanation. The Department of Civil Aviation attempted to downplay the event, calling the radar return an anomaly and visual reports possible atmospheric reflections. When questioned about flight diversions, spokespeople maintained these were routine precautions. However, subtle hints from military personnel suggested broader involvement. Theories about the object's origin proliferated. Some speculated it was a foreign reconnaissance aircraft testing Malaysian defenses, but the absence of typical aircraft characteristics, no noise, no contrails, no standard lighting, undermined this hypothesis. Weather balloon theories also fell apart, given the object's ability to execute sharp course changes that passive balloons cannot perform. UFO researchers considered this one of the strongest cases in Southeast Asia. Unlike typical rural sightings or single-witness encounters, this event occurred over a major airport with multiple credible observers. The decision to divert flights indicated authorities perceived a genuine threat to air safety. Years later, retired controllers spoke candidly about the night. They described an object that seemed to manipulate expectations, appearing and disappearing in ways no conventional aircraft could. One controller referred to it as a disk of light moving with clear intention, a description echoed by the pilots who first spotted it. Official documentation remains conspicuously absent. Requests for radar logs have gone unanswered, and media archives contain only the briefest mentions. Yet the incident endures in the memories of those present, representing a rare moment when an unexplained aerial phenomenon directly impacted a major Southeast Asian airport. The event serves as a stark reminder of the limitations of even our most advanced technological systems. Airports, typically models of precision and predictability, can be fundamentally challenged by encounters with the truly unknown. In 1999, a mysterious event disrupted a major international hub. An unidentified luminous intruder crossed restricted airspace, leaving controllers, pilots, and passengers bewildered. No aircraft was officially identified, no report filed publicly, and no conclusion offered. What remains is the stark fact of a disruption caused by something beyond recognition, a fleeting light against the sky that vanished before answers could emerge. Decades earlier, a similar unexplained phenomenon occurred in Nagata, Japan. In the 1970s, this bustling coastal city was a vibrant maritime center. Summer evenings pulsed with the rhythm of industrial life, fishing fleets returning, dock workers moving cargo, and harbor lights gleaming across dark waters. Against this backdrop of routine maritime activity, something extraordinary unfolded. Just after dusk, fishing crews returning to port noticed an unusual sight. What began as a potential helicopter sighting quickly transformed into something entirely different. Witnesses described a brightly metallic disc suspended silently above the sea. The object was circular, with a luminous edge that seemed to glow softly. Its body reflected the last sunlight almost like a mirror, yet simultaneously emitted its own ethereal radiance. One fisherman likened it to an enormous lantern hanging in the sky. The object remained stationary long enough to draw significant attention. Dock workers paused their loading, taxi drivers emerged from their vehicles, and numerous observers gathered to watch. Most striking was the complete absence of sound and water disturbance, unlike any known aircraft. Tracked briefly on radar before vanishing, this incident became another unexplained moment in a history of mysterious aerial encounters. The luminous disk hung suspended, a silent enigma, against the Nagata harbor's bustling evening landscape. Covering a vast distance in mere seconds, it performed a maneuver no known aircraft of that era could replicate. The movement was so abrupt and precise that witnesses couldn't help but gasp. Inside the local Coast Guard office, radar operators detected a strong, distinct contact matching the object's position. Just as quickly as it appeared, the blip vanished from the screen, disappearing at an impossible velocity. The next day, Niigata newspapers carried brief reports of the incident. Headlines spoke of mysterious lights over the port, with fishermen and dock workers describing a glowing, disc-shaped craft. Local radio interviews captured one fisherman's vivid description: larger than a helicopter, brighter than a plane, and moving unlike anything he'd ever seen. After a few days, media coverage faded. Yet for years, those who witnessed the event continued sharing their story. In seaside taverns, fishermen retold their accounts over drinks, maintaining remarkable consistency even decades later. They were adamant this was neither aircraft nor celestial body. Some interpreted the event through Japanese folklore, suggesting it was an omen about sky visitors. Others believed it a genuine craft from beyond Earth. Skeptics proposed it might be an experimental aircraft, noting the western coastline's strategic importance during the Cold War. However, the object's luminous quality, complete silence, and extraordinary acceleration challenged such explanations. No conventional jet or helicopter from the 1970s could hover silently and then accelerate out of sight in seconds. This Nagata port sighting aligned with a broader pattern of maritime UFO encounters worldwide during the Cold War. Similar accounts emerged from sailors in Norway, Brazilian fishermen, and Pacific naval crews. Luminous discs appeared over water, often near harbors, demonstrating speeds and precision beyond known technology. Along Japan's Sea of Japan, smaller fishing villages occasionally reported glowing orbs or discs hovering offshore, though such reports remained rare. Now, during Japan's mid-20th century UFO history, the Niigata port sighting stands out as a remarkable event. Unlike typical rural encounters, this incident occurred in an urban setting with dozens of credible witnesses, and radar reportedly confirmed the sighting. For UFO researchers, the combination of human testimony and technical evidence makes this one of Japan's strongest UFO reports from that era, yet the story remains largely unknown internationally. Without photographs and relying only on memories and fading news clippings, it never gained the attention of famous cases like Rendlesham or Belgium's Triangle Wave. Within Japan, however, UFO researchers still cite the Niigata incident as a cornerstone of modern UFO documentation. Those who witnessed the event have aged, with some already passing away. But among Niigata's older seafaring community, the story endures. They recall that evening's profound silence, the glowing disk's reflection on the harbor's dark water, the sudden impossible flight that swept the object away. For a few brief minutes, the entire port seemed suspended in time. Engines idled, conversations ceased, and everyone simply stared upward, united in shared wonder. Official records remained silent. The Coast Guard never issued a statement, and radar logs from that period are either sealed or lost. Newspapers quickly moved on, leaving only fragmented traces in archives. Yet in the memories of those present, the event remains as vivid as the shimmering light reflection across the water that night. This was no mere fisherman's tale or fleeting sky phenomenon. It was a structured, luminous craft witnessed by many and tracked by radar. No wreckage or photograph survived, only persistent questions. For the dock workers, fishermen, and townspeople who paused to look skyward that evening, the experience was undeniable. Something hovered over Niigata, departing with a speed and silence that defied all explanation. Not in the annals of UFO history, the Great Falls film stands as one of the most studied and debated pieces of evidence. On a sunny afternoon, Nick Mariano was preparing promotional shots for Great Falls Electrics when something extraordinary caught his eye. Two round, metallic objects reflected sunlight as they moved silently across the sky from northwest to southeast. His secretary Virginia stood beside him as Mariana quickly swung his camera upward, capturing about 16 seconds of the mysterious encounter. The resulting footage became a landmark in UFO documentation. Frame by frame, two bright circular objects glide steadily across the sky, defying identification as planes, birds, or weather balloons. The film's smooth sequence and lack of camera trickery made it particularly compelling. Local newspapers quickly spread the story, and the U.S. Air Force soon took possession of the reel for analysis under Project Grudge, a precursor to Project Blue Book. Mariana later claimed that when the film was returned, several frames were missing, specifically those showing the discs most clearly. This allegation sparked immediate suspicion about potential evidence tampering by the Air Force. Official explanations suggested the objects were reflections from F-94 jet fighters in the area. However, UFO researchers and civilian analysts vehemently disagreed. The objects' motion was too smooth, their reflectivity too consistent, and their shape too precise to match known aircraft. Subsequent investigations added layers of intrigue. The Robertson panel in 1953 dismissed the footage as inconclusive. Later, in the 1960s, the Condon Committee at the University of Colorado conducted a more detailed review. Remarkably, their own photographic experts concluded that the objects were anomalous and could not be identified as conventional aircraft, birds, or balloons. Despite these findings, the committee's final report ultimately downplayed the film's significance. For Mariana, the experience remained a pivotal moment, a brief but powerful glimpse into something unexplained that would continue to challenge conventional understanding of aerial phenomena. The Great Falls UFO film has become more than just a piece of footage. It's a lasting mystery that continues to captivate people decades after it was shot. Residents of Great Falls took pride in their local claim to fame. One of the earliest and clearest UFO documentations ever recorded. The 16-second film captured something inexplicable that has survived official attempts to dismiss it. During a summer afternoon, Nick Mariana witnessed something extraordinary that would challenge explanations for years to come. He remained adamant until his death that the film showed something genuine, with his secretary Renee supporting his account. They weren't seeking publicity or profit, but simply documenting an encounter they believed was real. What makes this footage unique is its nature as motion picture evidence shot in daylight with multiple witnesses. Unlike static photographs that can easily be labeled as hoaxes, the continuous movement of the objects challenges quick dismissals. Researchers periodically revisit the film, using modern technology to stabilize and analyze it, always returning to the same fundamental question. If these were jets, why do they look nothing like jets? The controversy surrounding the film has become as significant as the footage itself. Questions persist about potential alterations. Did the Air Force suppress clearer evidence? Were these unidentified objects advanced craft, or merely misinterpreted reflections? The absence of early frames ensures the debate remains unresolved. More than 70 years later, the film continues to circulate, restored and digitized for new generations. The discs move steadily across the frame, unidentifiable yet undeniably present. While it doesn't prove extraterrestrial visitation, it captures something real and unexplained. Ultimately, the Great Falls UFO film represents persistence. It has outlived its creator, survived official dismissals, and become an iconic piece of UFO evidence. Each replay confronts viewers with the same question that startled Mariana on that August afternoon. What exactly was seen that day? By an AUG? On August 25, 1951, something extraordinary unfolded in the quiet college town of Laxer. Three professors from Texas Technological College found themselves witnessing an event that would become one of the most notable UFO cases in American history. Agberg, Dr. W.L. Ducker, and Dr. W.L. Ducker, we Robinson were enjoying a late summer evening outdoors when a formation of bluish-white lights swept silently across the horizon in a perfect V-shape. As trained scientists, they approached what they saw with careful observation. The lights glowed steadily, far brighter than stars and moving faster than any aircraft or bird they could conceive. Counting between 15 and 30 objects, the professors quickly dismissed the possibility of meteors. These weren't streaking lights, but objects gliding together with remarkable precision. Within hours, their accounts sparked widespread reporting across LAC. Families on porches, students on campus, and motorists all began describing similar sightings. Witnesses struggled to find familiar comparisons. Some likened the lights to a flock of geese, but the similarity ended there. The objects moved with an unnatural speed and brilliance that defied explanation. Over the following nights, the phenomenon became a community-wide experience. Entire neighborhoods gathered outside, united by a mixture of wonder and unease. The professors continued their investigation, bringing binoculars to subsequent observations. Through their lenses, they confirmed their initial impressions. These weren't reflections or birds, but objects that maintained a consistent glow and traveled in deliberate formations. Their credibility as witnesses made their account particularly compelling. The case reached a pivotal moment on August 30th, 1951, when 18-year-old Carl Hart Jr. captured a significant piece of evidence. Spotting the lights in his backyard, he quickly reached for his Kodak camera, ready to document the mysterious aerial display that had captivated an entire town. As nights passed, the lights continued their strange, regular appearances. Children watched with fear, neighbors whispered in speculation, and cars lined the roadside as people tried to comprehend the inexplicable scene unfolding above them. LAC had become the center of an extraordinary mystery that challenged everything people thought they knew about the night sky. Now, Hart captured 5 photographs in rapid succession. Developed images revealed luminous discs arranged in a precise V-shape. He sold these pictures to the Loch Avalanche Journal, quickly spreading them across national newspapers. Life magazines soon republished the images, transforming local sightings into a nationwide phenomenon. These photographs provided unprecedented physical evidence supporting numerous witness accounts. Experts repeatedly analyzed the negatives, while skeptics challenged their authenticity. The images showed no signs of manipulation. Believers saw the photographs as definitive proof of something extraordinary in the sky. The U.S. Air Force investigated through Project Blue Book, interviewing Hart, local professors, and other residents. Their official explanation attributed the lights to clovers and birds reflecting mercury vapor streetlights. However, this conclusion satisfied almost no one. The professors strongly contested this theory. Through binoculars, they had observed lights moving with impossible speed and precision. No birds could maintain such perfect formation or motion. Hart remained steadfast, defending his photographs for decades. Independent analysts agreed the Air Force explanation was inadequate. Even within military circles, Some privately acknowledged the case's mysterious nature. The timing amplified public fascination. Cold War tensions were high, and flying saucer reports had circulated since 1947. But the Locke case stood out. Multiple nights of sightings, credible, scientific witnesses, and repeatedly analyzable photographs. For many, it suggested advanced, unexplained craft operating in American skies. Locke residents were profoundly affected. Parents recalled children crying in fear. Neighbors remembered standing together, overwhelmed by the inexplicable lights. Even professionally trained observers admitted their bewilderment. These photographs and experiences transformed a local incident into a national conversation about the unknown. The summer skies over Lash held secrets that would captivate and perplex for decades. In August 1951, something extraordinary unfolded, captured forever by Hart's quick reflexes on film. The case would become a cornerstone of UFO history, challenging understanding and sparking endless debate. Skeptics struggled to explain the phenomenon. They proposed conventional theories, birds, atmospheric effects, yet none fully accounted for the details. Believers found strength in the consistency of reports, the credibility of witnesses, and the enduring photographs of glowing discs. The images themselves were strikingly simple. No machinery, no complex structures, just luminous formations against the night sky. This very simplicity became their power. Something real had been recorded, yet remained beyond explanation. Life in West Texas soon returned to its rhythms. Harvests continued. College classes resumed. Evenings stretched beneath the wide, open sky. But those who witnessed the event could never fully forget. They remembered the brilliance of the lights, the sudden silence that fell over entire streets. The familiar sky transformed into something alien and strange. Today, the Lack lights remain suspended between skepticism and belief, an unsolved mystery that asks profound questions. Were they unknown aircraft? A misunderstood natural phenomenon? Something entirely beyond human comprehension? No definitive answer has emerged. What endures is the certainty of those nights. Hundreds of people saw something extraordinary, and a teenager's camera captured a moment that would challenge understanding. The lights may never be explained, but in their mystery lies their true significance. They remind us that the most ordinary places, a quiet backyard, a small college town, a tranquil night sky, can suddenly reveal the extraordinary. For the people of Lack, those evenings will always stand apart. Moments when the sky filled with strange formations, when silence and wonder gripped an entire community, and when their world seemed briefly touched by the unknown. On a late night along Highway 116 near Leland, a series of strange encounters began to unfold. Salado was driving when a brilliant blue torpedo-shaped object suddenly appeared in the sky. The craft descended toward the road, causing his truck's engine to sputter and die, and the headlights to go dark. Terrified, he and his passenger jumped out of the vehicle. The object roared overhead with intense heat and wind before vanishing into the darkness. Moments after its disappearance, the truck miraculously restarted. Less than an hour later, another motorist experienced nearly identical circumstances at almost the same location. Their car died abruptly as a glowing object descended and hovered, illuminating the road before vanishing and allowing the vehicle to restart. Over the next 2 hours, the Levin police station was inundated with at least 15 separate reports. Drivers across the area described a consistent phenomenon: stalling engines, failing lights, and a hovering luminous object. Witnesses varied in their description of the craft's shape. Some saw an egg-like form, others a cigar-shaped vessel, but all agreed on its extraordinary brightness. The craft seemed to generate its own pulsating light, casting an unnatural glow across the landscape. Sheriff Weir Clem, initially skeptical, decided to investigate personally. During his drive into the reported area, he witnessed a light flash and felt his engine falter, though his car didn't completely stop. By this point, the pattern was undeniable. Ordinary people, farmers, truck drivers, young couples, and even the county sheriff were reporting the same experience within a narrow time frame. What made these events particularly compelling was the consistent mechanical interference. Vehicles would stall only in the object's presence and restart immediately after its departure. Within 48 hours, the U.S. Air Force dispatched Project Blue Book investigators to Leveland. After interviewing witnesses and examining reports, They quickly concluded the sightings were caused by an electrical storm and ball lightning. However, this explanation seemed insufficient. There had been no storms in the area that night, and ball lightning typically lasts only seconds, not long enough to affect multiple vehicles across miles of roadway. The physical evidence and consistent testimony made this case far more intriguing than typical UFO reports. Something extraordinary had occurred along that stretch of highway, leaving witnesses bewildered and investigators struggling to provide a satisfactory explanation. The Levin UFO incident etched itself into American folklore, not through grainy photographs or radar blips, but through the vivid testimonies of those who experienced it firsthand. Drivers on a dark Texas highway found themselves unexpectedly united by a strange encounter that defied easy explanation. Sheriff Clem, initially skeptical, never fully retracted his statement about witnessing something unusual. His testimony lent credibility to what might have been dismissed as mere panic. When combined with over a dozen consistent reports within a short time frame, the case stood apart from typical UFO sightings. Witnesses described a surreal scene. One recalled how the craft's glow transformed the highway into midday brightness, casting long shadows across the prairie grass. Another found the sudden silence after the engine's death more terrifying than the sight itself, the vulnerability of being stranded in darkness with an unknown presence overhead. Decades later, analysts point to electromagnetic interference as a key piece of evidence. While many UFO reports involve strange lights, few demonstrate such direct interaction with vehicles. The repeated stalling of engines across different cars and witnesses suggests more than mere imagination or coincidence. Skeptics continue to argue for natural causes, yet struggle to explain the concentrated incidents on that single night. For the local residents, this was no abstract event. It was a night of fear, confusion, and awe, when familiar roads became the stage for something extraordinary. The official record labeled it ball lightning, but few who were present accepted this explanation. No photographs or radar logs existed, only the testimony of frightened motorists and the memory of dead engines on a dark highway. Yet for many, that was precisely what made the experience so compelling. The Levand case continues to linger in the American imagination because it feels tangible. A moment when the ordinary suddenly became inexplicable, transforming routine travel into an encounter with the unknown. A strange event unfolded over Mount Vernon, Indiana, on an evening in October 1966. It began with a phone call to the sheriff's office from a motorist pulled over on a rural road. Visibly shaken, he described glowing lights hovering above his car, pulsating with an unusual rhythm before shooting upward and vanishing into the night sky. Within an hour, multiple calls flooded the police switchboard. Another caller, a farmer on the town's outskirts, reported a similar phenomenon. What made these reports remarkable was their striking consistency. Witnesses across the area spoke of bright spherical lights, often appearing in pairs or trios moving low across the countryside. Some described the lights hovering silently above fields, casting an eerie glow on the ground. Others claimed they darted at impossible speeds, covering miles of sky in mere seconds. The color descriptions varied: white, orange, sometimes with a bluish tinge, but their behavior remained constant. Sudden stops, abrupt turns, and vanishing accelerations defied explanation of any known aircraft. Sheriff's deputies were quickly dispatched to investigate. Deputy Harold Schultz reported seeing a glowing object hovering over the Wabash River bottoms. According to his account, the object moved without sound, without wings, and without apparent purpose. When he attempted to approach, it darted away at tremendous speed, leaving him staring into the empty night. Another deputy confirmed similar lights near a stretch of farmland east of town, noting how his cruiser's radio briefly crackled with static as the object passed overhead. Local residents, already unsettled by widespread UFO reports that year, gathered outside their homes to watch. This was not just a light in the distance, but an event that reached deep into people's lives. It disrupted machines, halted vehicles, and forced people to look upward in fear. The combination of physical disruption and collective testimony makes it one of the most compelling UFO encounters ever recorded. For those who remember that night, the prairie highways would never feel entirely ordinary again. 1966 was the same year as the famous Michigan swamp gas sightings, adding another layer to the growing mystery of unexplained aerial phenomena. In the summer of 1966, Mount Vernon was gripped by a UFO mystery that would become local legend. Nights were punctuated by glowing orbs drifting silently overhead, leaving residents bewildered and on edge. Families gathered in yards, pointing at lights that defied explanation. Teenagers and adults alike reported strange occurrences. Cars would momentarily falter when the lights appeared, though they would restart without permanent damage. Livestock grew restless, and dogs barked at seemingly empty skies moments before the orbs emerged. These details mirrored reports from other regions, lending credibility to the mounting intrigue. The local newspaper, the Mount Vernon Democrat, cautiously covered the events. Headlines captured the community's mix of fear and curiosity, quoting both frightened residents and skeptical officials. The sheriff's office had logged numerous calls but offered no definitive explanation. Speculation ran wild. Some suggested Soviet aircraft, others proposed experimental US jets, and some whispered about visitors from beyond. In a town of fewer than 10,000 people, these lights dominated conversations in diners, barbershops, and church gatherings. The Air Force dispatched investigators from Project Blue Book. Their conclusion was straightforward. The lights were simply navigation beacons and stars distorted by atmospheric conditions. Many locals dismissed this explanation. Too many witnesses had seen objects move in ways stars and planes could not. Deputies who filed written statements remained steadfast. They insisted the lights were real, structured, and seemingly responsive. Though the official report closed the file, the memory persisted. Mount Vernon residents continued to recall those nights when strange orbs hovered above their town. For some, the incident became local folklore, a story shared at family gatherings about the time the entire community looked up together. For others, an unshakable sense of mystery remained, a feeling that something unknown had briefly visited their skies. In subsequent years, researchers contextualizing the Mount Vernon case noted it was part of a broader 1966 UFO wave sweeping the Midwest. Hundreds of reports from Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana described similar phenomena, glowing lights that hovered and darted in ways conventional aircraft could not. The Mount Vernon incidents fit squarely into this pattern, distinguished by the community's collective experience and unwavering testimony. In a small Ohio town along the river, something unusual happened that became part of local lore. Law enforcement officers documented strange encounters that went beyond mere curiosity. For Mount Vernon, these sightings represented a moment when the quiet rhythms of small-town life were suddenly disrupted. Under the night sky, diverse groups, farmers, teenagers, deputies, and families, shared a collective experience. They stood together, pointing upward with a mixture of fear and wonder. Although the intense lights never returned with the same frequency as that October night, the memory remained vivid. The town eventually returned to its peaceful existence, with official records filing these sightings under unidentified phenomena. Yet for those who witnessed the event, such labels felt inadequate. They recalled details that defied explanation, the way the lights pulsed, the accompanying silence, and the impossible acceleration that challenged everything they understood about flight. Today, these Mount Vernon lights are little more than a footnote in national UFO history. But for those who experience them, they represent something more profound. A reminder that extraordinary events can emerge in the most unexpected places. Particularly in small towns where the sky stretches wide, nights are long and the mundane can be suddenly interrupted by the inexplicable. Thousands of miles away in rural Oregon, another significant UFO incident was unfolding. On May 11, 1950, Paul and Evelyn Trent, a farming couple near McMinnville, captured photographs that would spark nationwide fascination. Evelyn first spotted a large metallic object moving silently across the sky while feeding chickens. She quickly alerted Paul, who grabbed his camera and managed to take 2 photographs before the object disappeared. When these black and white images were published in the McMinnville Telephone Register on June 9th, they immediately generated widespread debate. The photographs showed a distinctly shaped object with a metallic sheen hanging above their farm. Unlike previous grainy or distant UFO images, these pictures depicted something that appeared solid and structured. The photographs revealed a saucer-shaped object with a curved underside and a distinct dome on top. Notably absent were wings, a tail, or any visible means of propulsion. Within days, the images were reprinted in newspapers across the country, transforming this quiet farming community into the center of one of the 20th century's most enduring UFO controversies. Not. In the early 1950s, America was still grappling with the concept of flying saucers. Kenneth Arnold's famous 1947 sighting over Washington had introduced the idea, and the Roswell incident that same year had stirred rumors of crashed craft. Photographs of such phenomena were rare and often dubious. Against this backdrop, the McMinnville photographs emerged. The camera itself had only been in popular use for 3 years when Paul and Evelyn Trent captured their images. They did not rush to show the photos. For weeks, the film sat undeveloped, and when the images were finally printed, the couple casually shared them with friends. Only later, when a reporter from the local paper learned of the pictures, did they become public. This hesitancy, many researchers argued, lent credibility to the Trents. They had not sought fame or money, but simply recorded what they had seen. When the photos were published, they immediately drew the attention of the U.S. Air Force, which at the time was compiling reports through Project Blue Book. Analysts examined the negatives and could find no signs of trickery. The shadows in the images matched the time of day, the size and distance of the object were consistent with something large and aerial, and the Trent's account held steady under questioning. Skeptics, however, offered alternative explanations. Some suggested the object was a small model, perhaps a side-view mirror, or hubcap suspended by a string. Others accused the Trents of staging the photos for publicity. Yet, despite decades of scrutiny, no conclusive evidence of a hoax has ever been proven. The negatives, preserved in their original form, remain free of indications that the images were faked. The McMinnville photos gave the public a tangible image of what a UFO might look like. The Trents themselves never sought the spotlight. They consistently told the same story even when questioned years later. They made no money beyond the initial newspaper rights and lived modestly for the rest of their lives. Over the decades, the images have been subjected to repeated scientific analysis. In the 1960s, the Condon Committee, asked by the U.S. government to study UFOs, examined the photographs and concluded they were consistent with a genuine distant object, not a small model. Later studies reached similar conclusions, though skeptics continued to argue that a clever hoax could not be ruled out. Their lack of motive, combined with the strength of the photographs, has kept the case alive long after many others faded. The McMinnville UFO photographs have carved out a unique place in history. Decades after they were taken, these images continue to captivate and challenge viewers. An ordinary moment on a farm captured something extraordinary that would spark decades of debate. More than 70 years later, the photographs remain a focal point for UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike. They are reproduced in nearly every serious book about unidentified flying objects, often cited as some of the most compelling photographic evidence ever obtained. The town of McMinnville has embraced this legacy, hosting an annual UFO festival that draws visitors from around the world. What makes the case endure is not just the photographs themselves, but the stories surrounding them. Paul and Evelyn Trent are remembered not as publicity seekers, but as everyday people who happened to be in the right place at the right time with a camera ready. The images capture two moments that would echo through history, suspended between proof and mystery. Whether the object was an extraordinary craft or an elaborate trick may never be definitively resolved. Yet what cannot be denied is how these photographs have shaped generations' imagination of flying saucers. They do not answer the UFO question, but they absolutely refuse to fade away. In that persistent intrigue lies their true power. As long as the images continue to be studied, reprinted, and debated, they remind us that the extraordinary can leave a lasting mark in the most unexpected places. The McMinnville photographs stand as a testament to those fleeting moments that challenge our understanding of what might be possible. On a quiet night in Nebraska, a strange aerial phenomenon captivated law enforcement and civilians alike. What began as a routine patrol quickly transformed into an extraordinary chase involving multiple jurisdictions. Officers from different towns reported the same incredible sight, a luminous disc-shaped object that defied conventional explanation. The object's behavior was eerily deliberate. It would hover slowly, almost inviting observation, then suddenly accelerate with impossible speed. Patrol cars from various counties joined the pursuit, each adding their testimony to an increasingly bizarre narrative. Radio logs brimmed with excited, overlapping reports from patrolmen tracking the identified craft. Witnesses were not limited to law enforcement. Farmers in their fields, motorists stopped on rural roads, and families in their front yards all described the same remarkable vision. The craft appeared as a bright white oval with occasional reddish edges, moving silently despite being remarkably close to the ground. Its size was estimated between a car and a small plane, and it moved with a peculiar wobbling motion. Throughout the chase, strange electrical interferences occurred. One patrol car lost radio contact when the object passed overhead, while another deputy reported his headlights dimming during a close encounter. These details resonated with other historical UFO accounts, lending an air of credibility to the extraordinary event. As dawn approached, the object descended rapidly into the upper atmosphere, vanishing from sight. Exhausted officers regrouped, attempting to process their incredible experience. Some felt exhilarated by the night's events, while others were left with a profound sense of unease. News of the chase spread quickly. Local newspapers like the Lincoln Journal-Star reported the story, which soon reached national media. For the small farming communities of Nebraska, the incident was surreal, a night when something unexplainable had crossed their quiet landscape, challenging everything they thought they knew about their world. The sheriff's deputies in print were tracking an extraordinary flying object through the night. Their pursuit became a local legend that would ripple through UFO history. The U.S. Air Force investigated the incident through Project Blue Book. Their conclusions seemed dismissive. The object was likely Venus, combined with aircraft lights and misperceptions during a long night, but the officers who chased it remained adamant. They had witnessed something at close range, tracked its movements for hours, and described behaviors no conventional aircraft could match. The Blue Book explanation satisfied few who had been present. Researchers later noted that 1966 was a pivotal year in UFO investigations, with the Michigan swamp gas controversy embarrassing officials earlier that spring. Reports across the Midwest surged during summer and fall. The Exit case, with multiple police witnesses and pursuit across counties, fit perfectly into this broader wave of sightings. Unlike vague civilian accounts, this incident came with radio logs, written reports, and officers willing to stand by their testimony. What made the case particularly compelling was the credibility of the witnesses. Spar and the other deputies had no motivation to invent or exaggerate. Their accounts remained consistent, and their professional reputations were on the line. Multiple patrol cars across several jurisdictions confirmed the same object, giving the case a weight few UFO sightings achieve. For the people of Exit, the chase became a touchstone. Families recalled standing outside in the cool night air, watching lights streak overhead while police sirens wailed in the distance. Farmers spoke of livestock unsettled by the strange glow. Years later, the story remained part of local lore, retold in diners and community gatherings as the night the police chased a UFO. The Exit chase never found resolution. The Air Force closed the file with its planetary explanation, while researchers and witnesses remained convinced they had encountered something far stranger. For those who lived it, the memory of the glowing craft leading police cruisers across dark highways remained vivid. The story endures because of its mix of drama and mystery. Patrol cars chasing a silent, luminous object across rural America. It was not a fleeting flash in the sky, but a prolonged event involving trained observers meticulously documenting their observations. In a field crowded with exaggerations and rumors, the Exit chase stands out as a case rooted in detailed testimony and shared experience. Today, the pursuit is remembered less for its headlines than for what it represented, a genuine, unexplained encounter that challenged conventional understanding. On the night of June 22, 1976, something extraordinary unfolded over the waters near the Canary Islands. The Spanish Navy vessel Atrevida was the first to spot a massive luminous object rising from the sea, and they weren't alone in their observation. Thousands of residents across multiple islands, Tenerife, La Palma, Gran Canaria, and La Gomera, witnessed a radiant phenomenon that would become a lasting mystery. The object appeared as a brilliant globe, bluish-white in color, with an internal structure that defied easy explanation. Witnesses described the scene differently. Some saw a glowing sphere resembling a nucleus, while others compared it to a giant jellyfish floating above the ocean, its light spreading across the clouds in mesmerizing waves. What made this event truly remarkable was its unusual duration. The luminous object remained visible for over 30 minutes. Naval officers on the Atrevida's deck meticulously logged their observations, noting the object's eerie silence and immense size. The sphere seemed almost alive, pulsing and shifting, expanding and contracting. Smaller lights would emerge from its central core, darting in various directions before vanishing. Coastal residents reported their homes and streets bathed in an otherworldly glow. Beams of light appeared to scan the earth, creating an atmosphere of both wonder and unease. A doctor in Tenerife observed the phenomenon through binoculars, describing a well-defined transparent sphere with a smaller luminous body inside. Families stood together, uncertain whether they were witnessing a natural phenomenon, a secret weapon, or something completely beyond human understanding. The event remained an unsolved mystery, a testament to the unexplained encounters that can interrupt even the most routine moments. By the following morning, the sighting had become the talk of the islands. Thousands of people had witnessed a giant sphere of light, and local newspapers splashed the story across their front pages. The incident stood out from typical UFO reports due to its unprecedented scale and credibility. Naval personnel, professionals, and ordinary citizens all described the same event at the same time. The Spanish military took swift action, compiling reports from the Atravida and civilian observers into a file that reached the Ministry of Defense in Madrid. Investigators dug deep. They interviewed witnesses, gathered detailed drawings, and examined radar logs. Although no radar stations had tracked the object, the sheer consistency of accounts made dismissing the incident impossible. For years, the case remained primarily a Spanish concern, known mainly among UFO researchers. But in the 1990s, Spain began declassifying its UFO archives. The released documents included an official report on the 1976 Canary Islands event, which confirmed the military's serious investigation and acknowledged the thousands of witnesses, including the naval crew's puzzling testimony. The report described the phenomenon as a large, luminous object of unknown origin. Skeptics proposed alternative explanations, suggesting the event might have resulted from a submarine-based missile or rocket test with its exhaust plume illuminated in the upper atmosphere. Some argued the glowing shapes were consistent with a ballistic missile launch from an Atlantic submarine. While this explanation addressed the size and brilliance of the display, it failed to account for specific details reported by close observers. The structured nucleus within the sphere, smaller lights darting away, and beams extending toward the ground. What truly sets the Canary Islands incident apart is its unique combination of mass testimony and military involvement. Unlike isolated sightings or grainy photographs, this was an event where civilians and naval officers stood together, witnessing the same vast, luminous object. The Atravida's official logs provide a rare, credible anchor. Professional sailors documented their observations without exaggeration, noting the object's shape, color, and behavior with remarkable precision. For the islands, the event became part of local folklore. Older residents still recalled the night when the Atlantic sky seemed alive with an inexplicable light. Families who gathered on rooftops became witnesses to a moment that would be remembered for generations. Not in 1976, the Navy found itself caught between awe and fear. A routine patrol transformed into something extraordinary, compelling officers to confront an unexplainable event. Since that moment, the Canary Islands incident has remained a cornerstone of European UFO documentation. Spanish military files lent official credibility to the case. Despite rigorous investigation, the phenomenon defied explanation. Theories about missile tests or atmospheric anomalies continued to circulate, yet the consistent and numerous witness accounts kept the mystery alive. The scale of observation was staggering. Thousands witnessed the same massive object hovering above the Atlantic, from fishermen to doctors, families on rooftops to sailors aboard naval vessels. The Spanish Defense Ministry ultimately labeled it a phenomenon of unknown origin, an unsolved mystery suspended above the waves of 1976. This incident joined Spain's UFO canon, often mentioned alongside legendary encounters like Rendlesham Forest in England or the Belgian Triangle Wave. The skies returned to normal after that June night, but the memory endured. Decades earlier, a similar incident unfolded at Keflavik Airport in Iceland. On April 30th, 1959, radar controllers experienced something extraordinary. The scope lit up with an unexpected blip-in object moving at impossible speeds across North Atlantic airspace. Keflavik was no ordinary airport. Built by the US military during World War II, it had become a critical NATO listening post during the Cold War. Situated on the windswept Raikana Peninsula, it provided crucial radar coverage between North America and Europe, a strategic early warning system against potential Soviet threats. Ground observers reported a bright light darting low over the runway, rising sharply into the night sky and vanishing over the ocean. Radar operators confirmed the object was no technical glitch. It appeared solid, maneuvering with deliberate altitude and heading changes that defied conventional explanation. Anything unusual in these skies was taken seriously. That night, controllers tracked an object moving at speeds that challenged everything they understood about aerial movement. The night sky over Kjellvik Air Base was anything but ordinary. Ground personnel began reporting visual confirmations of something unusual, with reports streaming in from multiple sources. An airman on the tarmac described a brilliant white light hovering just above the horizon before shooting upward at a steep angle. Guards stationed at the perimeter fence witnessed a glowing orb drifting silently overhead, illuminating the ground below. Pilots reported no contact with any conventional aircraft in the sector. Witnesses insisted the light pulsed or flickered, suggesting deliberate power manipulation rather than a natural phenomenon. The sighting stretched nearly half an hour, with the object appearing intermittently on radar and to the naked eye. Each time it returned, it performed maneuvers that defied explanation, sudden stops, rapid accelerations, and vertical climbs that seemed impossible. Controllers initially worried it might be a Soviet reconnaissance craft, but its movements were so extreme that even this explanation seemed improbable. By morning, official reports had been sent to both the US Air Force and NATO Command. Kjellvik's strategic importance meant any unidentified object near its runways was considered a potential threat. However, internal memos reflected more confusion than alarm. The object left no trace beyond eyewitness accounts and brief radar tracks. When Project Blue Book eventually catalogued the case as unidentified, analysts proposed explanations from atmospheric anomalies to celestial reflections. Yet these theories fell short of satisfying the detailed reports from trained observers. Local impact was significant. Civilian newspapers in Iceland reported fragmented details of strange lights near the base. For residents of Kjellvik, the sighting became a topic of intense discussion. Fishermen spoke of lights darting through ocean clouds, while families recalled an unusually bright horizon glow. Decades later, declassified NATO documents would provide additional context to this mysterious event. These were not amateur observers, but trained personnel accustomed to identifying aircraft and interpreting radar returns. Their testimony carried a weight that could not be easily dismissed. The object simply did not match any known rocket or missile trajectory, leaving more questions than answers about what truly occurred that night over Kjellvik Air Base. The Kjellvik base, situated in a critical NATO air corridor during the Cold War, became the site of a remarkable UFO encounter that would etch itself into local folklore. Military officials took particular note of the 1959 incident. Due to its rare combination of radar tracking and visual sightings, the object's dramatic maneuvers left both researchers and base personnel puzzled. Some experts proposed the sighting might relate to secret US missile or rocket tests, suggesting the Kjellvik staff were unaware of classified operations. However, others argued that if it were American technology, the base would not have logged it as unidentified. The unexplained nature of the encounter persisted. Iceland's strategic location made it a key surveillance hub, lending additional weight to any report from its radar operators. This wasn't a distant civilian observation, but a documented intrusion into a sensitive military zone. Locals who worked near the base remembered the night when even the Americans, with all their advanced technology, admitted they couldn't explain what was in the sky. More than 6 decades later, the Keflavik UFO remains an unsolved mystery. It's archived in Blue Book among hundreds of similar cases. But what distinguishes this encounter is the serious professional manner in which it was investigated. Trained observers tracked a glowing object, moving in ways no known aircraft could, leaving NATO's most vigilant outpost bewildered. The Rakhines Peninsula still resonates with the hum of jet engines and the sweep of radar dishes, a constant reminder of Iceland's crucial role in transatlantic defense. For those who witnessed that April night in 1959, the memory endures of an aerial phenomenon that defied explanation, challenging everything they understood about flight and technology. This incident became part of the quiet folklore of the peninsula, the story of an unexplained aerial intrusion that transformed an ordinary military base into a site of mysterious significance. The luminous disk moving across the night sky caught the attention of professional astronomers, who quickly realized this was no ordinary celestial event. Unlike a typical aircraft or star, the object defied conventional explanation. Through telescopes, observers noted its unique characteristics: a circular, metallic appearance with self-generated illumination and movement that challenged understanding of aviation technology. What made the sighting truly remarkable was the object's unprecedented flight behavior. It didn't follow a predictable path like a satellite or plane. Instead, the disk performed sharp, abrupt turns, accelerating and decelerating in ways that seemed to defy known physics. Multiple witnesses confirmed the structured nature of the aerial phenomenon, ruling out meteors or atmospheric anomalies. Detailed telescope logs documented an unidentified object moving against wind currents. The observers were not amateur skywatchers, but trained professionals and students skilled in distinguishing celestial bodies from atmospheric distortions. Their testimony carried significant weight in the realm of unexplained aerial sightings. Local newspapers cautiously reported the event, mentioning strange lights observed over Dublin by observatory staff. The restrained coverage nonetheless sparked public intrigue. The fact that trained scientists had documented such an encounter lent unusual credibility to the report. International interest quickly followed, with the British Ministry of Defence requesting additional information. Subsequent investigations revealed no formal military report. Researchers later uncovered correspondence that acknowledged the sighting as fundamentally unexplained. The Air Ministry could not attribute the object to known aircraft, balloons, or astronomical phenomena. Skeptics proposed various explanations, including early artificial satellites or atmospheric reflections, but these theories failed to fully account for the observers' detailed descriptions. The context was critical. In 1955, experimental rockets had only recently reached orbit, and no satellites were visible to the naked eye until Sputnik's launch in 1957. This timing made alternative explanations even more challenging to substantiate. The astronomers' account remained a compelling mystery, challenging contemporary understanding of aerial technology and observation. Not UFO reports were comparatively rare in Ireland compared to Britain or other European nations. What set the Dunk incident apart was the involvement of a national observatory, lending the case particular credibility and intrigue. The maneuvers described in the logs challenged existing explanations, quietly entering the catalogues of European UFO researchers. Unlike typical sightings involving farmers or motorists, this event carried the unusual authority of a scientific institution. Scientists trained to seek rational explanations openly admitted observing something they could not classify. Their descriptions were methodical and restrained, yet resolute in one critical assessment: the object was real, structured, and definitively aerial. For Ireland, such an occurrence was extraordinary. Observatories are fundamentally designed to dispel illusion and clarify what the human eye might misinterpret. Yet on this night, in 1955, the observatory confronted something beyond conventional understanding. While the sighting never attracted massive public attention like the Leech Lights or Belgian Wave, it became a pivotal reference point in Irish UFO discussions. For most visitors, the observatory's domes and telescopes symbolize scientific certainty. However, those familiar with its history remember 1955 as the year when the night sky revealed not stars or planets, but a luminous disk that defied explanation. The case demonstrated that even the most disciplined observers, equipped with advanced instruments and extensive training, can encounter the inexplicable. It did not prove extraterrestrial existence nor provide physical evidence, but it showed science's vulnerability to genuine mystery. Today, Dunk Observatory continues its work, a historic site for Irish astronomical research and education, carrying with it the enduring memory of that singular night when scientific observation met the unexplained. No witnesses from different walks of life, farmers, teachers, motorists, and town officials, all described the same glowing presence over Dragonarn and neighboring villages. For several nights in succession, similar lights were reported, creating a pattern that intrigued local residents. The descriptions varied slightly. Some saw discs, others saw spheres, but all agreed on their silence and intensity. These mysterious objects hovered low, glided against the wind, and in some cases appeared to split into smaller lights that rejoined after a few seconds. Farmers reported livestock becoming unusually disturbed, refusing to settle during the nights of the sightings. Local authorities logged the reports but could offer no explanations. Official investigations ruled out conventional explanations. Helicopters were not operating in the region, and weather balloons did not match the size, brightness, or maneuvers described. The French Air Force confirmed no military flights had taken place in the area. What gave the Dragon Yan sightings particular weight was the consistency of witness accounts. A family driving home along a country road saw a sphere cross their path, floating low and moving slowly before vanishing behind a ridge. A school teacher described how her dog began barking uncontrollably before she noticed a strange light suspended above the valley. The light seemed steady, white with a faint orange edge, and appeared to ripple across the vines as though it carried weight. The object paused and shot off with a sudden acceleration that left witnesses shaken. French civilian UFO investigators soon catalogued the case as part of a wave of sightings that swept across southern France in the mid-1970s. Researchers interviewed the dragon witnesses and collected sketches that showed remarkably similar shapes, discs with domed tops, glowing spheres, and radiant orbs splitting into pairs. The phenomenon was logged as one of the clearest regional flaps in the country during that decade. In later years, France's official UFO research body, GPA, later NIRS/G, reviewed the Dragon case. While they did not release a definitive explanation, their files described the sightings as unidentified aerial phenomena observed by multiple credible witnesses. That acknowledgement kept the Dranian encounters alive in official archives. Skeptics suggested alternative explanations, but the consistent and detailed accounts remained a compelling mystery. Not in the summer of 1974, the quiet town of Dragwin experienced an event that would become etched in local memory. The sightings of a mysterious glowing sphere above the vineyards challenged conventional explanations and left an indelible mark on the community. Witnesses provided compelling accounts that defied natural phenomena. A farmer described the object illuminating the ground in extraordinary detail, casting distinct shadows across his crop rows. A teacher who observed its movement insisted the object accelerated with a precision and speed impossible for any known natural effect. The encounter became more than just a fleeting tale. In local cafes and markets, the story was retold repeatedly. Parents would remind their children about those strange nights, and farmers continued to discuss how unsettled their animals had been during that remarkable week. This is not a typical story that would fade with time. Instead, the Dragon sightings became a defining moment that disrupted the quiet rhythm of rural life. Nearly 50 years later, the case remains prominent in French UFO literature, classified as a classic close encounter of the first kind, CEE-1, where objects are visually observed at close range without physical interaction. While no photographs or physical evidence were collected, the volume and consistency of witness testimony made the case significant. The Dragon Yan case remains unresolved, filed among France's well-documented UFO sightings. For those who lived in the town during that summer, no scientific explanation has ever completely erased their memories. Residents still speak of the glowing sphere hovering above the vineyards, of the night silence broken only by barking dogs, and how the object vanished into darkness as if it had never existed. The sky returned to normal, but the memory did not. It became woven into the town's history, as permanent as the vines lining its hillsides. This was not a grand spectacle for the world, but a shared local mystery quietly passed from one generation to the next, carrying the weight of an unexplained encounter. On a pre-dawn morning in Petrozavodsk, something extraordinary unfolded in the sky. People stopped and stared, transfixed by a phenomenon that would soon capture attention across multiple countries. The sky transformed into a giant, luminous jellyfish of light, hanging silently and pulsing with an otherworldly presence. Witnesses described a spectacle unlike anything they had ever seen. Shifting colors of red, orange, and white radiated beams that looked like luminous rain falling toward the earth. For over 10 minutes, the object expanded and hovered, creating an unreal scene that drew everyone's gaze. Entire neighborhoods lit up under the strange rays. Lake Onega's surface shimmered unnaturally. Workers abandoned their paths to factories, nurses crowded hospital windows, and drivers pulled to the roadside, all united in witnessing this inexplicable event. The Cold War context immediately triggered questions. Was this a missile test gone wrong? A nuclear incident in its early stages? Yet alongside fear, many experienced profound awe. They believed they were observing something beyond earthly understanding. The luminous display wasn't confined to Petrozavodsk. Similar sightings spread across the Kuralia region, extending into Finland and as far as Denmark. Pilots reported unusual horizon lights, and hundreds of witnesses across multiple countries described an identical scene: a radiant object expanding into a giant sphere, releasing light beams resembling celestial rain. By morning, government offices and local newspapers were overwhelmed with calls. Citizens demanded explanations for the sky's mysterious performance. Descriptions remained strikingly consistent: a central glowing body expanding into a dome, with light seemingly falling toward the ground. Some claimed the beams touched the Earth before retracting, while others reported smaller lights breaking away in straight trajectories. The timing added further intrigue. Days earlier, the Soviet Union had launched a Cosmos series satellite from the Plasets cosmodrome nearby. Initially, officials suggested a potential connection, but the phenomenon's scale and unusual light patterns didn't align with typical rocket behavior. Even Soviet scientists found themselves unable to categorize what had been witnessed. In an unprecedented move, the Soviet news agency TASS publicly reported the event on September 23rd, describing it as an unusual natural phenomenon, a decision that only deepened the mystery surrounding that remarkable morning. The Petrozavodsk phenomenon defied simple explanation. Seen as a giant luminous body emitting rain-like beams of light, the event was unique enough that TASS openly acknowledged its occurrence, rare in an era of suppressed, unexplained sightings. Scientists were deeply divided about the incident. The Soviet Academy of Sciences was flooded with urgent reports from regional observatories, meteorological stations, and civilian witnesses. Some researchers connected the event to a satellite launch, suggesting it might have been a fuel release creating a massive glowing cloud. Others strongly disagreed, emphasizing that the light beams appeared too structured and persistent to be rocket exhaust. International media was captivated. Finnish newspapers described the object as a huge shining jellyfish, while Danish observers likened it to a luminous umbrella opening in the sky. The scale of the sighting made dismissal impossible. Behind closed doors, Soviet officials grew increasingly uneasy. The Ministry of Defense launched a comprehensive investigation, gathering radar data and interviewing military personnel. Their findings were striking. No aircraft, domestic or foreign, had been in the area, and no missile alerts had been triggered. Local residents carried vivid memories of that night. A factory worker described how the light penetrated like daylight, illuminating machinery and casting unusual shadows. Hospital patients stood in their robes, pointing upward in disbelief. Families in working-class neighborhoods along the lake reported feeling a faint vibration as the beams descended, though no physical traces were ever discovered. The phenomenon lasted approximately 15 minutes. The luminous jellyfish-like formation gradually contracted and vanished, leaving the sky returning to normal. No explosions, no sirens, just stunned silence across the city. Over time, the Petrozavodsk incident became one of the best documented mass sightings in Soviet history. Dozens of official reports were meticulously preserved in state archives, waiting for future investigation when the Soviet Union began declassifying UFO-related files. In the late 1980s and 1990s, the mysterious event over Lake Onega transitioned from local whispers to a scientifically acknowledged phenomenon. Thousands of witnesses reported an extraordinary sky display that defied conventional explanation. While skeptics argued the sighting could be attributed to a Cosmos rocket launch, suggesting atmospheric inversions might have created unusual visual effects, sympathetic scientists found the accounts challenging to dismiss. No previous rocket plume had ever produced such a lasting, widespread visual experience with beams seemingly falling to Earth across multiple countries. For the residents of Petrozavodsk, this was more than a scientific curiosity. It was a transformative moment when their familiar sky became something utterly alien. The event entered local folklore, often summarized by the haunting phrase, "the night the sky opened." Unlike typical fleeting UFO sightings, this phenomenon was different. It lingered, spread across borders, and compelled acknowledgement from both Soviet and Western press. The immense dome above Lake Onega, the strange descending beams, and the sense of standing beneath something vast and incomprehensible remained etched in collective memory. More than 4 decades later, the Petrozavodsk event remains unsolved. It stands as a rare instance where civilians, scientists, and international observers unanimously reported a structured sky display. When the beams finally faded and the sky returned to normal, the questions remained. Today, it represents a moment where science and mystery collided, leaving an indelible mark on those who witnessed it. No explanation has ever fully erased the memory of that extraordinary morning when the sky itself seemed to transform. The phenomenon began with objects moving at impossible angles, darting swiftly across the sky. Witnesses described luminous forms that pulsed with white light, subtly tinged with red and blue hues. News spread quickly as telephones at local newspapers and police stations began ringing. Citizens from across the city reported the unusual aerial display. Taxi drivers pulled over on major roads, families in suburban districts like Amiga and Fredericksburg, and pedestrians all stopped to watch the mysterious lights. The sightings continued deep into the night. Some residents noted the lights hovering low enough to cast faint reflections on canal waters and windows. University students using binoculars from an apartment balcony described metallic cores surrounded by glowing halos. Others claimed to see structured forms behind the lights, disc-like shapes and dome-like structures. Local authorities found themselves overwhelmed. Police dispatchers logged dozens of calls, and when patrol cars investigated, officers witnessed the lights themselves. One patrolman's report highlighted the object's rapid, controlled movements that defied explanation. Danish air traffic control confirmed no aircraft were in those sectors at the time. The next day, newspapers carried measured reports of the widespread sightings. Unlike sensationalist coverage, the Danish press reported the consistent testimonies with restraint. The headline, UFO over the capital, caught national attention, but the reports remained factual. Surrounding areas, Sioux reported similar experiences. Farmers described glowing spheres passing silently over fields. Fishermen along the Aura Strait claimed to see orbs hovering above water, their reflections rippling before vanishing skyward. Each account shared the same characteristics: luminous, silent, fast, and incredibly maneuverable. What made the Copenhagen lights remarkable was their urban setting. These were not isolated rural sightings, but widespread observations by a diverse group of witnesses: police, students, workers, and families, all describing the same extraordinary aerial phenomenon. The Copenhagen lights of the 1970s became a quiet urban legend. Throughout Europe, UFO sightings were spreading, and Denmark's capital was no exception. Citizens, many highly educated and analytically minded, began reporting strange aerial phenomena over densely populated areas. Police officers and military personnel quietly investigated these occurrences, especially given Denmark's strategic Cold War position between NATO allies and the Soviet sphere. Any unidentified objects triggered serious scrutiny. Witnesses consistently described objects that defied conventional explanation, moving against wind currents, hovering low, and accelerating at impossible speeds. Internal military correspondence suggested the Air Force considered these lights as potential, unauthorized aerial intrusions, though no official radar confirmations were ever released. Skeptics proposed alternative explanations like atmospheric anomalies or experimental aircraft, but these theories failed to fully account for the observations. Entire city blocks would gather outside, neighbors pointing upward together. Students sketched the objects' movements from dormitory rooftops, creating informal documentation. Families preserved these memories, transforming the sightings into local folklore. The events held particular significance in the Cold War context. Denmark's position at NATO's northern defensive edge meant that unexplained craft traversing its capital carried substantial psychological weight, whether natural, foreign, or genuinely unknown. These lights unsettled the familiar sense of security. While not achieving the fame of later European UFO cases like Belgium's sightings or Britain's Rendlesham Forest incident, the Copenhagen lights remained notable. UFO researchers subsequently catalogued them among Scandinavia's most credible unexplained phenomena, emphasizing the variety of witnesses and urban setting. Today, these events persist in Scandinavian UFO archives, a reminder that even the most mundane skies can suddenly become mysterious. No. Over Copenhagen, something mysterious stirred in the 1970s. People were going about their evening routines, drivers crossing bridges, families drawing curtains, cinema-goers stepping outside, when suddenly everyone paused. Luminous objects glided silently overhead, capturing collective attention. these events defied explanation. No conventional aircraft, balloons, or weather phenomena could account for what was witnessed. The lights appeared, hovered, and then vanished, leaving behind only memories and reports. For those who experienced it, this wasn't folklore but a real moment when something unexplainable traversed Danish skies. In the early 1960s, Lake Victoria's vast waters held a similar enigma. Before dawn, fishermen were accustomed to the lake's usual stillness, just oars splashing and lantern lights flickering to attract fish. But one night, everything changed. A brilliant glow first appeared near the horizon. Initially mistaken for a distant vessel's flare, the light soon expanded, brightening dramatically. It detached from the horizon and rose silently, casting such an intense reflection that Africa's largest lake seemed illuminated like daylight. Fishermen dropped their nets in shock. Some described the light as almost living, pulsing and rippling while hovering. Across the lake's Ugandan side, other boat crews witnessed the same phenomenon. Voices carried warnings, with some paddling frantically toward shore, believing a crashing aircraft was imminent. Others remained motionless, paralyzed by what they saw. Years later, one fisherman told a journalist, "The fish beneath us scattered. It was as though the water itself wanted to escape." Soon, reports from Tanzania's coastline confirmed the event wasn't isolated. Villagers awoke to their huts flooded with an extraordinary glow. Families rushed outside to witness a radiant sphere hovering low over the water. Narrow, white-blue light beams descended, sweeping methodically across the lake's surface. Unlike broad spotlights, these beams moved with apparent intention, retracting and shifting in ways suggesting deliberate control. For several breathless minutes, the object remained stationary. Then, to everyone's astonishment, it began gliding smoothly along the lake, defying all expected behavior of known aerial phenomena. No, Lake Victoria's night sky became a canvas for an extraordinary event that defied explanation. Fishermen and villagers on both the Ugandan and Tanzanian sides of the lake witnessed a silent, luminous object moving with purpose across the water's surface. Witnesses described a light like a lantern skimming the waves, leaving a trailing reflection that rippled beneath it. As it moved, birds roosting along the reeds burst into the night sky, startled by its presence. The object's movement was unusual, suddenly rising vertically until it became a pinpoint star before vanishing. Some observers claimed the light split into smaller orbs, darting in separate directions before reuniting. By dawn, the story had spread widely. In local markets, people spoke of a night sun and a star dancing on the water's surface. Elders on the Tanzanian coast remembered children crying as beams swept across their village. Though details varied, the core of the story remained consistent, a mysterious silent object moving low over the lake, present and then gone in an instant. Both Ugandan and Tanzanian police quietly logged the incident, but without nearby radar facilities, they had no technical data to analyze. During this period of colonial transition towards independence, official responses were minimal. By the mid-1960s, as Uganda and Tanzania became independent states, the event became part of local folklore, rather than an official concern. For UFO researchers in later decades, this became one of the most significant multi-witness cases on the African continent. The event was remarkable for several reasons. It spanned an international boundary with witnesses on both sides of the lake. Environmental interactions were notable, reflections on the water, disturbances among fish and birds, and probing light beams. Witnesses from diverse backgrounds, fishermen, villagers, and travelers, provided remarkably consistent accounts. Skeptics have attempted various explanations. Meteors can create bright water reflections, but they don't hover or sweep beams. Ball lightning was suggested, but it typically lasts only seconds and lacks structured movement. Smuggler's flares were also proposed, yet the object's prolonged silence, presence, and vertical ascent ruled out such mundane explanations. The Lake Victoria lights remain an enduring mystery, a testament to the unexplained phenomena that continue to challenge our understanding of the world around us. Note in the transformative landscape of 1960s East Africa, something extraordinary occurred near Lake Victoria. Independence movements were sweeping through Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, creating a context of immense change. In this era of limited foreign military presence and rare advanced aircraft, local communities experienced an event that defied explanation. Fishermen and villagers along the lake shoreline witnessed a structured craft that behaved beyond the technological capabilities of the time. The encounter quickly became absorbed into local lore. Ugandan fishing communities remembered it as the night the sky touched the water. Tanzanian elders interpreted it as an omen, a visitation from something not of this earth. The region's unique geographical characteristics may have played a role in this mysterious event. Situated along the East African Rift, known for geological and electromagnetic anomalies, Lake Victoria provided an isolated stage for an unexplained aerial phenomenon. Some researchers speculate that the area's distinctive conditions might have attracted or influenced the lights. What makes this incident remarkable is its high credibility. Multiple independent witnesses reported the same experience. Families still recall how beams of light swept across their huts, how silence carried more dread than sound. No conventional explanation has ever matched the object's described behavior. No satellites, rockets, or known aircraft could account for what was seen. Decades later, the story persists. Older fishermen continue to tell younger generations to respect the lake, not just for its storms, but for the mysterious things that appear above it. The encounter remains vivid in the memories of those who witnessed it. To them, it was not an illusion or a mistake, but a real, structured, and foreign presence. The Lake Victoria Light Stand is one of Africa's greatest UFO mysteries, a moment when entire communities looked up and saw something impossible. For the people of Uganda and Tanzania, the words and memories remain unchanged. Something extraordinary happened that night, something beyond explanation. The Nile Delta's familiar rhythms filled the early 1980s. Farmers worked the green clover fields, irrigation canals reflecting sunlight, when an extraordinary event unfolded near Cairo in 1982. As evening approached in Bilbais, northeast of Cairo, farmers noticed something unusual. A brilliant light hung in the twilight sky, initially mistaken for a helicopter from the nearby Air Force Base. But its glow was different, too steady, too intense and unnaturally silent. The object hovered low over farmland, moving with precise deliberation. Farmers dropped their tools, calling to each other. Families emerged from their homes, drawn by the strange illumination. Witnesses later consistently described a large oval object, white at its core, with a reddish edge, approximately 20 meters across. Animals reacted first with intense agitation. Donkeys brayed, dogs barked wildly, and cattle panicked in their pens. One farmer reported his ox remained motionless for hours, seemingly paralyzed by fear. People oscillated between fascination and terror. Children cried as the light beam swept across their homes while elders muttered prayers. Military and civil authorities quickly became involved. Bilbais Air Base radar operators tracked an unpredictable target that appeared and vanished without warning. Pilots prepared for interception, but no official scramble order was issued. Local police received numerous reports of a burning object over the fields. Officers who arrived witnessed the craft's extraordinary movements themselves. One sergeant privately admitted he had never seen his colleagues so unsettled. They described an aerial object moving unlike any airplane, gliding silently, then accelerating in sudden bursts before stopping abruptly. The Ministry of Civil Aviation became involved, adding another layer of official investigation to this perplexing incident in Egypt's agricultural heartland. Non-Cairo International Airport, a bustling hub less than an hour's flight from the Delta, becomes the focal point of an extraordinary encounter. The night's routine was shattered when controllers on duty logged something extraordinary, an unidentified luminous object moving in an irregular pattern, visible to pilots but invisible on secondary radar. Witnesses describe an intense scene unfolding in the fields below. A beam of light projected from the craft seemed to deliberately search the ground. Crops glowed under an intense spotlight, and canals shimmered with reflected brilliance. Farmers reported bizarre details, smaller lights like sparks or probes detaching and rejoining the main craft. A 12-year-old boy remembered seeing 3 stars moving like fish around the primary object. For nearly 20 minutes, the display continued. Then, with shocking suddenness, the object tilted, climbed sharply, and vanished into the upper atmosphere. Villagers watched as the glow diminished to a single point among the stars. Barking dogs and whispered voices broke the ensuing silence. The next morning brought official investigation. Air Force and local police examined the fields, discovering scorched clover patches where the light beam had lingered. The soil beneath had hardened unnaturally, a fact farmers insisted was new. For the Egyptian Air Force, this was deeply troubling. Bil Base Air Base, a cornerstone of the country's air defense responsible for guarding Cairo and the Suez Corridor, had experienced an unidentified craft hovering in its jurisdiction. Military officers logged the event but classified it, avoiding public acknowledgement. The Ministry of Civil Aviation maintained similar silence. Egypt was cultivating an international profile in the early 1980s, seeking investment and stability, acknowledging unknown aerial objects. Penetrating controlled airspace near Cairo would undermine these efforts. Civilian controllers were simply instructed to note anomalous light phenomena in their logs. Local newspapers carried only vague references to strange lights reported by Delta villagers. Editors carefully avoided detailed reporting, maintaining a careful narrative of normalcy. In the spring of 1982, the ordinary rhythm of Egypt's agricultural heartland was suddenly disrupted by an extraordinary event. The Cairo Delta UFO incident would become a pivotal moment in Egyptian ufology, a story that spread rapidly among locals and refused to be dismissed. Hundreds of witnesses had seen something that defied conventional explanation. Farmers showed visitors scorched patches of ground where an oval light had swept beams across their fields. Children drew pictures of the mysterious craft in their school books, capturing the vivid memory that would not fade. Skeptics proposed explanations, helicopters, weather balloons, experimental flares, but villagers quickly rejected these theories. The object was silent, while helicopters roared. It darted and stopped. Unlike drifting balloons, it hovered for 20 minutes, challenging every rational interpretation. Police officers who patrolled that night would later admit privately that they had witnessed something beyond explanation. Farmers spoke of the night the sky turned white and the canals glowed. Children who had hidden under blankets grew into adults who retold the story with unwavering detail. The involvement of both the Egyptian Air Force and the Ministry of Civil Aviation lent institutional weight to the event, even though neither would release their findings. Researchers would eventually catalogue this as one of the most significant cases in North Africa, notable for its mass sightings, electromagnetic effects, animal reactions, and physical traces. No experimental aircraft, atmospheric trick, or foreign intrusion has ever explained what occurred. For the farmers in the Delta, it was never a theoretical discussion. They had seen the oval craft, watched its beams sweep their fields, and felt their animals panic at its presence. For the Egyptian Air Force, it represented a security concern, a reminder that something could intrude into their airspace without warning. For researchers, it stands as one of the clearest cases of the unexplained in the Middle East. The night is remembered not in speculation but in testimony. Farmers, police, airmen, and controllers were all forced to admit that something real had appeared and then vanished, leaving behind nothing but scorched soil and an enduring mystery. In the spring of 1972, a Johannesburg primary school bustled with typical midday energy. Boys kicked footballs across the dusty ground, while younger children climbed makeshift bars. Teachers watched from verandas under corrugated iron roofs, the air thick with chalk dust and the sound of running feet. Suddenly, a strange silence descended, the usual playground noise faded, replaced by hushed murmurs. Children stopped mid-play, their eyes drawn skyward. A boy's football hung motionless. A girl froze mid-chase. Something unprecedented hung in the sky above them. A metallic, misshapen object gleamed in the noonday sun, suspended impossibly high and completely silent. It was broad and flat, unlike anything anyone had seen before. Teachers initially thought the children were playing, but they too were soon transfixed by the strange sight. The craft reflected sunlight in quick flashes, tilting subtly as if adjusting its position. It defied explanation. No wings, no tail, no drifting. Instead, it hovered, deliberately seeming to watch the scene below. Older boys rushed to the wire fence, straining to keep the object in view. Younger children huddled together, wide-eyed and frightened. Teachers emerged, attempting to calm the growing panic, but their own voices trembled with uncertainty. One teacher later recalled thinking it might be a weather balloon, but quickly dismissed the idea. Balloons don't stop and start. They don't shimmer with metallic edges. They certainly don't vanish with the incredible speed this object would soon demonstrate. For several breathless minutes, the scene remained frozen. 100 children suspended between fear and wonder beneath a silent disc that seemed to survey the schoolyard. Some students claimed to see a faint dome on top. Others described a pale, bluish ring of light along its underside, barely noticeable until viewed directly. A science teacher, observing from the veranda, noted the object's movements as deliberate and mechanical, adding to the day's inexplicable mystery. The playground fell quiet after an extraordinary event that defied explanation. A metallic disc had appeared without warning, tilting sharply and shooting upward at such a steep and rapid angle that witnesses could barely comprehend what they had seen. Immediately after the craft vanished, the yard erupted into chaos. Children's reactions varied wildly. Some cried in fear, believing they had witnessed something dangerous, while others ran between groups, excitedly comparing details. One boy claimed he saw windows on the dome, and another girl spoke of smaller lights flickering beneath the disc. Teachers quickly gathered their pupils, herding them back to classrooms, while whispering urgently among themselves about what they had observed. By that afternoon, dozens of children were carrying home identical stories of a metallic disc hovering over their playground before disappearing skyward at incredible speed. Parents initially dismissed the accounts, but their skepticism faded as they realized the children's descriptions were remarkably consistent. After speaking with teachers who confirmed seeing the same thing, unease replaced doubt. Within days, the local Rand Daily Mail printed a small article featuring unnamed teachers who stood by their account of an unusual craft. Amateur investigators soon arrived at the school, interviewing children and asking them to draw what they had seen. The resulting sketches were striking. Each showed a broad disc with a dome and faint underside glow. A researcher noted the extraordinary consistency across different age groups, observing that even very young children drew almost identical shapes. The South African UFO Bureau quietly logged the incident, though no official government statement was issued. Rumors suggested military intelligence might have its own classified file. Whispers among researchers hinted that radar operators at a nearby base had recorded unusual returns on the day of the sighting, while skeptics proposed alternative explanations like misidentified aircraft or weather balloons. None adequately explained the event's distinctive characteristics. The 1970s were marked by a surge of strange aerial sightings across South Africa. Pilots near Cape Town reported glowing discs pacing their planes, while farmers around Pretoria described metallic objects hovering over their fields. In 1974, residents near Port Elizabeth would later claim to find physical traces of a close encounter. Within this broader context of mysterious events, the schoolyard incident in Johannesburg became part of a wider tapestry of unexplained phenomena. Multiple teachers were present that day, and their careful testimony, along with consistent details from dozens of witnesses, made mass hysteria an unlikely explanation. For the children who witnessed the event, the memory remained vivid well into adulthood. Decades later, they still spoke of the day recess transformed into an encounter with the unknown. They recalled the eerie silence, the shimmer of the object, and how quickly the sky seemed to swallow it. One former pupil, interviewed years later, stated simply, "It wasn't a balloon. It wasn't a plane. We all saw it. It changed the way I thought about the world." Teachers who were present that day carried the memory as well. Long retired, some privately admitted the incident continued to puzzle them. They remembered how the object moved against all logical understanding and the shock reflected in their students' eyes. They recalled trying to reassure the children while knowing they themselves had no explanation. Internationally, the case remained relatively obscure, later overshadowed by the famous 1994 Rua incident in Zimbabwe. Yet, in many ways, the Johannesburg event was its precursor. It shared key elements: the schoolyard setting, broad daylight, a hovering disc, numerous witnesses, and adults' enduring inability to explain what occurred. The story passed into local lore, whispered among parents, and retold by families still living in the area. It never reached mythical status because too many credible witnesses existed to dismiss it as mere invention. Instead, it settled into collective memory as a shared experience. A moment when something extraordinary broke into the ordinary lives of Johannesburg's children and teachers. Today, those children are grown, many with grandchildren of their own. Yet, when asked, they still describe the same sight: a metallic disc floating silently over their playground, a ring of light, a sudden impossible appearance, known in the heart of a Johannesburg schoolyard witnesses encountered something beyond explanation. The sky held mysteries that defied understanding. This wasn't a case of distant nighttime sightings or remote encounters, but a broad daylight event in the most ordinary of settings. No experimental aircraft, no meteorological anomaly, and no trick of light could match their testimony. For these witnesses, this was not speculation but lived history as real and vivid as any childhood memory. Researchers continue to view this incident as a stark reminder that extraordinary events can unfold in the most unexpected places. On the evening of July 7, 2010, the air over Hyo was thick with midsummer heat at Xiaoshan International Airport. Departure boards flickered, luggage trolleys rolled across polished terminal floors, and passengers went about their routine, travel families waiting, business travelers rushing, airline crews preparing for late-night routes. Nothing hinted at the imminent disruption. Shortly after 8:30 p.m., air traffic controllers noticed an unusual radar return in the approach corridor. Initially dismissed as interference or a weather anomaly, the signal grew stronger, moving steadily across restricted airspace. Attempts to confirm visually yielded intriguing results. Pilots on at least 2 flights reported an unusual object, a bright, glowing presence cutting across their approach path. Descriptions varied wildly. One crew saw an elongated, cigar-shaped light with a golden glow and shimmering haze, while another compared it to an impossibly large, steady, hovering lantern. This object wasn't following any standard flight path, challenging every conventional explanation. Not identification code was being broadcast. This prompted immediate safety measures. Controllers quickly moved to close the airport temporarily. Flights bound for Ningbo and Wuxi were diverted, while aircraft already on the taxiway were instructed to return to their gates. Passengers received only vague announcements about operational issues. The tension in the control tower escalated as the unidentified object lingered in restricted airspace for nearly an hour. Shutting down an international airport in China is never a decision taken lightly. Ripple effects spread across the nation's air traffic network. Thousands of passengers found themselves caught in the disruption, with dozens of flights delayed or rerouted. While officials maintained silence, local residents around Hange began sharing their observations. Suburban residents described a glowing object moving slowly across the night sky. Blurry photographs began to circulate online, showing a streak of light with a hazy aura. Some images appeared to depict a luminous body with a trail, sparking speculation about missiles or secret aircraft. However, eyewitnesses insisted the object moved with controlled precision, unlike a typical rocket trajectory. Taxi drivers near the airport reported traffic grinding to a halt as people exited their vehicles to watch the phenomenon. Farmers in the outskirts claimed the object seemed to hover silently, with some insisting its glow pulsed, changing intensity. By the next morning, headlines blazed across Chinese news outlets. UFO shuts down Xiaoshan Airport, declared China Daily and other publications. The rare use of UFO in state media caught international attention, with CNN, BBC, and Reuters highlighting it as one of the most dramatic aviation-related incidents of the decade. Within days, the narrative began to shift. Official statements reframed the closure as a precautionary measure, hinting at potential military activities. Some media outlets retracted earlier headlines, and online forums saw shared photographs disappear. Internationally, it remained a sensational UFO story, while domestically, the incident faded into obscurity. The Civil Aviation Administration of China initially claimed ignorance, citing only security concerns. Later speculation suggested the object might have been connected to military testing. On analysts outside China noted unusual activity by the People's Liberation Army in the region, with secret missile and aircraft trials being common knowledge. The night's events, however, had no official connection to scheduled operations. While a theory suggesting a private jet without clearance was proposed, this explanation seemed implausible. The scale of the airport shutdown indicated something more significant than a rogue small craft. Private aviation in China was tightly regulated, and anonymous sources described radar returns suggesting a much larger object. The Hange incident stands out for 2 key reasons. First, the massive disruption. A major international airport closed for nearly an hour due to an unidentified object. Aviation authorities treat safety as paramount, and such closures are reserved only for severe threats like storms, accidents, or unidentifiable, uncommunicative objects. Second, there was a brief moment of media openness. Chinese state media initially labeled the object a UFO a significant choice of words that was quickly retracted. Several photographs from that time remain in circulation. One image shows a glowing object with a radiant tail resembling a luminous comet. Skeptics argue these were long-exposure airplane shots. However, when compared with flight schedules and approach angles, inconsistencies persist. Other images hint at a structured craft emitting beams, though image quality remains low. Despite widespread mobile phone usage, few high-quality videos emerged, suggesting stronger evidence might have been collected, but withheld. Rumors circulated in subsequent weeks about Chinese military officials seizing radar logs and recordings. Airport civilian staff reportedly signed non-disclosure agreements. While the aviation authority maintained silence, foreign researchers observed that closing an airport during peak hours, costing millions in delays and diversions, was unlikely for mundane reasons. The event remains unsolved. Neither natural phenomena nor known aircraft fully explain the duration, visual characteristics, and radar presence. International UFO researchers continue to cite this as one of the most credible mass disruptions caused by an unknown aerial object in modern history. The UFO Shutdown occurred during a period of increasing interest in aerial anomalies across Asia. In the same decade, reports emerged from India's Lida region of glowing objects near the Himalayas and luminous orbs in Thailand. In the autumn of 2007, a quiet evening in Siliguri, West Bengal, near the eastern Himalayan foothills, was about to become anything but ordinary. Farmers were heading home, and the sun had just dipped behind jagged mountain ridges. The town's usual twilight rhythms were about to be dramatically interrupted. It started with plantation workers noticing an unusual glow in the northern sky. At first, they assumed it was a bright planet like Venus or Jupiter, common during autumn evenings, but this light was different, too intense, too close, moving in ways that defied natural explanation. Word spread quickly. Neighbors emerged from their homes, gathering in the cool grass, staring upward at a phenomenon that would soon enter local folklore as one of India's most intriguing mass UFO sightings. The object appeared as a brilliant orb, golden white, radiating a haze that seemed to distort the surrounding air. Witnesses described something extraordinary. Unlike aircraft, this object produced no sound. Unlike helicopters, it displayed no standard navigation lights. Hovering approximately a few hundred meters above the ground, it was large enough to be clearly visible against the darkening sky. For nearly 20 minutes, it maintained a near-silent position, subtly shifting as if under intelligent control. This incident represents more than a local curiosity. It exemplifies how unidentified aerial phenomena can disrupt normal life, bridging civilian experiences with broader questions of international aviation and state secrecy. The Siliguri sighting underscores the thin line between routine experience and unexplained encounters. The event's aftermath mirrored many similar incidents: confusion, speculation, and an eventual return to silence. Thousands might have been inconvenienced, travel plans disrupted, but the core mystery remained. What object had so confidently entered restricted airspace, commanding enough presence to captivate an entire community? Ultimately, only photographs, fragmented testimonies, and a brief media acknowledgement survived. The traces of an event China and other authorities seemed eager to forget lingered, a reminder that some mysteries defy conventional explanation. The strange lights appeared above Siliguri, moving in swift arcs before reuniting with a central glow. Witnesses were adamant these weren't ordinary celestial objects or lanterns. Their movements seemed deliberate and far more precise than drifting balloons. Reactions among villagers varied widely. Some families hurriedly gathered their children indoors, securing doors and windows as if protecting against an unknown threat. Others remained outside, completely captivated by the aerial display. An elderly farmer attempted to light incense, believing it a divine message, while younger observers speculated about foreign aircraft or supernatural phenomena. News of the event spread rapidly through the town. Shopkeepers closing their stores paused to observe the sky. Commuters on scooters stopped mid-journey, some abandoning their vehicles to watch. The object was visible from multiple locations, and local journalists later documented remarkably consistent witness accounts. Descriptions painted a vivid picture: a bright orb hovering silently for nearly half an hour, breaking into smaller lights before vanishing without trace. By the time local police arrived, the phenomenon had already concluded. Officers admitted seeing a faint glow, but could provide no detailed explanation. The station log merely noted strange light reported by citizens. No official investigation followed. The incident seemed destined to become local folklore, yet for witnesses, the memory remained powerful. Some villagers reported seeing the orb descend towards tea fields, casting a golden illumination on the leaves. Others described the smaller lights as conducting a systematic ground search, darting in quick, precise patterns. The main object's final departure was dramatic, shooting skyward at incredible speed and leaving only silence behind. Local Bengali newspapers ran short articles with intriguing headlines. Regional television briefly interviewed visibly shaken tea workers, but within days the story disappeared from national consciousness, buried beneath political and economic news. No official explanation emerged from the Indian Air Force or Meteorological Department. Nonetheless, theories and speculation continued to circulate among those who had witnessed the extraordinary event. A UFO sighting near Siliguri became a significant event precisely because of its extraordinary communal nature. Unlike typical isolated reports, this incident involved workers, farmers, shopkeepers, and commuters who all witnessed the same phenomenon simultaneously. Multiple theories attempted to explain the incident. Some suggested ball lightning, but this seemed unlikely given the object's unusually long duration and behavior. Others proposed it might be a drone or helicopter. Yet India's drone technology in 2007 was limited, and villagers emphasized the complete absence of rotor noise. The region's location added intrigue to the event. Siliguri sits near India's northern frontier, close to the strategic Siliguri corridor, a narrow land connection between northeastern India and the rest of the country. Military analysts had occasionally reported unusual lights near border areas, which sparked speculation about potential Chinese activity. However, no records confirmed Chinese incursions, and the object's silent hovering performance didn't match conventional aircraft capabilities. UFO researchers consider this a notable case, primarily because of its widespread witness accounts. Decades later, the memory remains vivid for those who experienced it. Villagers still describe a profound moment of collective wonder, children clinging to parents, time seemingly suspended as dozens of neighbors stood transfixed by an inexplicable glowing orb illuminating the quiet plantations. The object vanished as mysteriously as it appeared, leaving behind only questions and a shared memory of something beyond ordinary understanding. Some classify it among the most significant modern sightings in eastern India, while others view it as another unsolved curiosity preserved in regional stories and UFO research circles. For those present that night, this was more than a mere light in the sky. It was a moment that disrupted the familiar rhythms of farming, traffic, and daily life, offering a glimpse into the unknown. A warm morning in 2004 on Cebu Island in the central Philippines began like any other school day. Children gathered for assembly in a courtyard, teachers carefully organizing them into neat rows while the usual chatter of students filled the open air. The sky was a pale, clear blue typical of tropical mornings. In that moment of ordinary calm, something extraordinary happened. Hundreds of witnesses, both young and old, suddenly turned their eyes upward to an unexplained phenomenon. It started with a shimmer, a bright glint in the sky, like sunlight catching on glass. Students were the first to notice, pointing and shouting, breaking the assembly's rhythm. Teachers initially tried to quiet the children, believing it was just an airplane or balloon. But as more eyes followed the strange sight, the atmosphere changed dramatically. Suspended above the schoolyard was a glowing sphere, bright enough to stand out even in full daylight. Witnesses described it as a fireball, yet distinctly different from any meteor they had ever seen. The object hovered unnaturally, with a steady pulsing golden-white glow. A faint haze seemed to ripple around its edges, as if heat were distorting the air. Unlike typical meteors that blaze briefly and disappear, this object remained in place for several minutes. Some teachers later reported feeling as if the sphere was deliberately observing the crowd below. Panic erupted among the children. Dozens screamed and scattered, some running back to classrooms, others clinging to their teachers. The adults, though visibly unnerved, continued watching. Several witnesses claimed the sphere descended lower, perhaps a few hundred meters above the ground, then stopped abruptly, as if under precise control. No sound accompanied the object, no engine roar, no thunderous crack. Just silence, broken only by the terrified cries of school children. A few brave students later insisted they saw the object emitting thin rays of light, almost like beams fanning out across the sky before retracting. To this day, no military explanation or scientific theory has fully resolved what happened. The incident remains an open question, a powerful reminder that even in our world of crowded skies and advanced radar systems, mystery can still descend quietly over a small town, leaving people looking up in wonder. An unusual aerial phenomenon swept through Cebu City one morning, leaving hundreds of witnesses bewildered. Canada. The event began in a schoolyard, where a glowing object displayed an unnatural movement pattern. Instead of drifting casually, it shifted sideways in sharp, deliberate motions. Local residents from all walks of life reported seeing the same thing. Shopkeepers, GP drivers, office workers, and people in surrounding neighborhoods all described a hovering ball of light. Some spotted it while commuting to work. Others saw it from fields on the city's outskirts. Within a brief time span, thousands of people shared this extraordinary experience. News of the incident spread rapidly. Radio stations fielded calls from listeners recounting their observations, and regional newspapers began describing it as a daylight fireball. However, official responses were quick to minimize the event's significance. Government officials offered various explanations. Some suggested it was a meteor, while others proposed it was a weather balloon reflecting sunlight. Yet these theories failed to match witnesses' detailed accounts. Meteors typically appear for seconds and travel in arcs, not hovering in place. Weather balloons move steadily with wind currents and cannot dart sideways or accelerate vertically at impossible speeds. Respected community members, including school teachers, publicly challenged these explanations. One teacher described standing in the courtyard, watching the sphere hover silently above children. She was certain the object was controlled, not randomly drifting. Parents, hearing their children's panicked descriptions, demanded more information. Despite their concerns, no government investigation was launched. As the story spread beyond Cebu, it gradually transformed into a rumor. National media coverage became cautious, labeling it an unconfirmed aerial sighting. The lack of photographic evidence worked against the credibility of the account. Mobile phone cameras were uncommon at the time, and skeptics quickly dismissed the event as exaggeration. Yet the remarkable consistency across dozens of children's and adults' testimonies lent the story a compelling weight. Years later, UFO researchers in the Philippines collected detailed testimonies. Many witnesses recalled the emotional intensity, the fear, awe, and profound sense of vulnerability experienced while confronting something completely unknown. Some students, now adults, still vividly remember that extraordinary morning. No, he spoke of how vivid the memory remained, a defining childhood moment he struggled to reconcile with mundane explanations. The fireball over Cebu wasn't just another story, it was an event etched into collective memory. Across Southeast Asia in the early 2000s, similar incidents emerged. Indonesia and Thailand reported luminous spheres in broad daylight, often hovering over populated areas. These daytime sightings carried more credibility, as the objects were clearly visible against the sky, impossible to mistake for stars or distant aircraft lights. The scale of the Cebu incident makes it particularly compelling. A single witness might be mistaken, and a small group could misinterpret what they see. But when an entire schoolyard and city residents report the same hovering object, the weight of testimony becomes difficult to dismiss. What followed was silence. No official inquiry, no radar checks, no formal acknowledgement. The event was preserved through oral accounts and scattered local reports. For the children present that morning, the image was permanent. A glowing sphere descending silently, holding their attention with a mix of fear and awe before vanishing into the heavens. Teachers faced an inexplicable moment, confronted by young faces looking up with questions they couldn't answer. The wider community transformed the experience into local lore, recounting it at gatherings and passing the story through generations. The fireball defied conventional explanation. It wasn't a meteor, which burns fast and loud. It wasn't a balloon which doesn't dart or vanish. Instead, it was something else. An object that appeared, lingered, and left with a precision suggesting controlled movement. Its silence was as unsettling as its presence, revealing just enough to be seen but nothing more. Today, The Cebu fireball stands as one of the most compelling mass sightings in the Philippines. It's a story told not through a single testimony, but through the overlapping memories of hundreds of witnesses. While officials turned away, those who looked up that morning remember what they saw: a sphere of light against the clear tropical sky, revealing itself and then disappearing, leaving behind only questions and a lasting impression. In January 2011, near Yogyakarta, the typical rhythm of rice fields was disrupted by an extraordinary discovery. The landscape that usually hummed with farmers working, children playing, and evening sounds of insects and distant motorbikes suddenly became the site of a mysterious phenomenon. Residents of Sleman district had reported unusual nighttime lights, glowing orbs hovering silently above the fields before vanishing. Some thought they were festival lanterns. Others assumed they were aircraft. But when morning arrived, something far more intriguing emerged. A massive circular formation stretched nearly 70 meters across a rice paddy. The crop stalks were flattened with incredible symmetry, creating an intricate floral design that defied natural explanation. Farmers stood at the field's edge in disbelief while children excitedly raced around the formation's edges. By midday, journalists from Yogyakarta arrived with cameras, and aerial photographs soon appeared in Indonesian newspapers. The design resembled crop circles long documented in England, geometric, precise, and seemingly impossible to create overnight. For local Javanese, this event carried deep cultural significance. Rice fields are sacred spaces connected to Dewi, the fertility goddess. Some villagers saw the formation as a divine message, while others perceived it as a disturbing intrusion into their natural world. Authorities quickly responded. Police cordoned the area to manage growing crowds, and scientists from Gadjah Mada University began investigating. Botanists examined the stalks, noting they were bent rather than broken, with signs of heat or pressure exposure. Some stalks appeared slightly scorched at the base. Meteorologists conclusively ruled out storms or wind as potential causes. The mysterious formation remained an enigma, a perfect geometric circle pressed into the green expanse, challenging understanding and sparking widespread wonder. Police tried to calm rumors about UFO landings, foreign military experiments, or prankster hoaxes. Yet, the formation's complexity and lack of footprints challenged these explanations. The incident drew international attention. By the second day, the site had become a pilgrimage. Thousands of visitors flocked to the field, some offering prayers, others taking photos. Vendors appeared along the roads, turning the mystery into a local spectacle. Crowds grew so large that farmers worried about crop damage, prompting police to set up access barriers. Images of the formation were published by Reuters and circulated online, sparking global speculation. Western media labeled it a crop circle in Indonesia, linking it to similar European phenomena. UFO researchers noted that reported lights aligned with theories of unidentified craft creating crop impressions. Skeptics argued for human hoaxing, though villagers doubted anyone could have created such a formation without being noticed. The timing deepened the mystery. Multiple witnesses reported skylights before the discovery. Several villagers described silent orbs hovering above fields around 10 p.m., suddenly vanishing. One farmer saw a lightning-like flash. Though no storm clouds were present, many saw this as a direct connection between aerial phenomena and the morning's ground formation. Scientists from Gadjah Mada University published initial observations. They noted rice stalks were bent at unusual angles with slight base discoloration, suggesting exposure to an energy burst. While avoiding definitive conclusions, they acknowledged the formation couldn't be explained by weather. Mechanical flattening was considered but dismissed as no tracks, boards, or entry points were found in the surrounding mud. The district chief cautiously called it a mystery, refusing to speculate further. The mystery of the crop circle in West Java began with lights and ended with a transformation that would be remembered for years. Farmers spoke of a night when something extraordinary marked their sacred rice fields with a geometric design that defied explanation. This was more than just another agricultural anomaly. Unlike the familiar crop circles of Wiltshire, England, this event represented a fresh chapter in a global mystery. A phenomenon that bridged local traditions with unexplained aerial events. The incident quickly captured attention as one of the first major crop circle reports in Southeast Asia. Eyewitness accounts told of strange aerial lights preceding the formation. The precision was striking. Perfect arcs bending rice stalks with no visible footprints. Skeptics suggested human intervention, arguing that boards and ropes could theoretically create such a design. But the complexity and execution challenged that simple explanation. In a rural community where secrets rarely remain hidden, creating such a precise pattern would require extraordinary effort and coordination. Those who stood at the circle's edge felt something undeniable had occurred, as if an unknown force had descended, pressed a message into the landscape and vanished into the night. Photographs continued to circulate among researchers and believers, adding the event to Indonesia's growing catalogue of unexplained phenomena. The crop circle joined other mysterious narratives of glowing orbs and volcanic sightings. More than a decade later, the details remain vivid: mysterious lights, flawless geometry, a sacred rice field transformed overnight, though the circle eventually withered with the harvest. Leaving only memories and images, something profound had occurred. No official dismissal could erase the quiet awe inspired by that West Java night. The incident paralleled other unexplained events, such as the Kuala Lumpur airport radar intrusion of '99, another moment when conventional explanations seemed inadequate. The new international airport, a gleaming symbol of modern technology, would become another backdrop for the mysterious. Malaysia's air traffic control center stood as a symbol of modernization, its tower rising above the runways. At sunset, the calm routine of controllers was broken by an unidentified object crossing restricted airspace above the capital. Clear skies stretched for miles, and a radar operator noticed an unusual blip that didn't match any flight plan. Moving steadily across an approach corridor, the object initially seemed like a software glitch. When a second scope confirmed the contact, the operator called for verification. Other controllers gathered, confirming the object's presence and deliberate movement. Radio calls went out to nearby pilots. One captain inbound from Paniang reported a glowing disc-like object hovering above the horizon, bright against the fading daylight. Another pilot corroborated the sighting, describing a luminous oval with a pale halo moving without standard navigation lights or beacons. The situation rapidly intensified. Controllers diverted 2 flights from the corridor as a precaution. The contact suddenly shifted direction in a manner impossible for conventional aircraft at that altitude and speed. Pilot reports described the object as metallic, reflecting sunlight, and emitting a faint glow. It left no contrail, produced no sound, existing only as an unexplained presence. Supervisors in the control tower contacted the Malaysian Air Force for assistance. Scramble orders were reportedly prepared, though accounts differ on where the fighters were launched. Some sources suggest jets were dispatched but failed to intercept before the object vanished. Others claim the military simply monitored the incident remotely, avoiding direct confrontation. For nearly half an hour, the unidentified object remained on civilian radar before accelerating out of range at an extraordinary speed. On the ground, passengers remained unaware of the extraordinary event unfolding above them. No, in the early hours near Kuala Lumpur International Airport, something unusual happened. Flight controllers and technicians began exchanging hushed whispers about an unidentified object, and local residents reported seeing a strange, intensely bright light moving silently across the night sky. The following morning, local newspapers picked up the story. Headlines mentioned an unidentified aerial phenomenon that had caused temporary flight delays, with UFO references carefully sprinkled throughout the reports. 2 pilots confirmed they had personally witnessed the object, lending credibility to the initial accounts. Civil aviation officials quickly responded, attempting to manage the growing narrative. They described the radar return as an anomaly and suggested the visual reports might be atmospheric reflections. When questioned about flight diversions, spokespeople insisted these were routine precautions. Though no official mention was made of Air Force involvement, off-record comments suggested military personnel had been alerted. Speculation ran wild. Some theories proposed it was a foreign reconnaissance aircraft testing Malaysian defenses, but the object's characteristics lack of noise, contrails, and conventional lighting contradicted this explanation. Weather balloon hypotheses also fell short, as balloons cannot execute the abrupt course changes reported that night. For UFO researchers in Southeast Asia, this became one of the strongest cases of the decade. Unlike typical rural sightings or single witness encounters, this event occurred over a major airport and involved multiple professional observers, including radar operators and pilots. The decision to divert flights suggested authorities considered the object a genuine threat to air safety. Years later, retired aviation insiders would quietly discuss the night with a mixture of frustration and wonder. Some controllers recalled how the radar return defied logical explanation, describing the object as a disk of light that seemed to play with their expectations, appearing and vanishing in ways no conventional aircraft could. The Kuala Lumpur incident remained an enduring mystery, challenging established understanding of aerial phenomena. The memory of that night endures in the community of those who witnessed it. A major Southeast Asian airport was directly affected by an unexplained aerial object, forcing diversions and drawing the attention of civil and military authorities. The incident was moved with intention, as first reported by pilots, though official records remain conspicuously absent. Airports operate on precision and predictability. Flight paths intersect like clockwork. Radar sweeps the skies in steady rhythm. But on that evening in 1999, everything was unsettled by a single luminous intruder, silent and uncooperative, crossing restricted airspace with remarkable ease. For the controllers tracking the mysterious blip, for the pilots who saw the glowing disk above the horizon, for the passengers delayed without explanation, the night remains unresolved. No aircraft was identified, no report filed publicly, no conclusion offered. What endures is the fact that a major international hub was disrupted by something beyond recognition. A firefly of light against the Malaysian sky that vanished before answers could be found. In the 1970s, Niigata was a bustling coastal city, a hub of fishing fleets, shipping lines, and industrial growth along the Sea of Japan. Summer evenings brought the harbor to life with clanging metal, waves slapping against docked boats, and the constant drone of engines. Fishermen unloaded their catch while dock workers moved cargo, and harbor lights shimmered across black water. Against this backdrop of ordinary maritime life, something extraordinary occurred. A luminous disk hovered silently above the harbor, watched by dozens and briefly tracked on radar before vanishing. The sighting began just after dusk when several fishing crews were returning to port. The first reports came from men working the decks who noticed the strange light hovering above the water. Initially, they thought it was a helicopter, but as their boats drew closer, the differences became clear. The light was too steady, the shape too sharp. What hovered over Niigata that evening defied explanation. The evening sky held something extraordinary, a bright metallic disk suspended above the sea. Many witnesses gathered on the docks, watching in amazement as the object hovered silently. Dock workers abandoned their cargo loading, and taxi drivers left their vehicles, all drawn by the sight. The craft appeared almost luminous, with an edge that seemed to glow softly. Its surface reflected the last sunlight like a mirror while simultaneously emitting its own light, creating an otherworldly appearance. One fisherman later described it as a massive lantern hanging in the sky, larger than any house. The water beneath remained unnaturally calm, without the turbulence typically caused by helicopters or jets. Inside the local Coast Guard office, radar operators detected a strong, distinct signal matching the object's position. But just as quickly as it appeared, the blip vanished from their screens at an impossible speed. For several minutes, the object hung motionless above the harbor. Then, without warning, it shifted abruptly to the side, covering a distance no known aircraft of that era could match. The movement was so sudden and precise that witnesses audibly gasped. Newspapers in Niigata reported the incident the next day. Headlines spoke of mysterious lights over the port, with articles quoting dock workers and seamen describing a glowing disc-shaped craft. Local radio interviews featured a fisherman who emphasized the object's unique characteristics: larger than a helicopter, brighter than a plane, and moving unlike any known aircraft. Yet after brief media coverage, the story faded. For years afterward, those who witnessed the event continued sharing their accounts. In seaside taverns, fishermen would recount the story over drinks, with remarkably consistent details even decades later. Some viewed the event through a cultural lens, suggesting it might be an omen connected to Japanese folklore about sky visitors. Others believed it was a genuine craft from beyond Earth. Skeptics proposed it could have been an experimental aircraft during the Cold War era. Regardless of interpretation, the witnesses remained united in one conviction. What they saw was neither a conventional aircraft nor a celestial body, but something truly extraordinary. The coastline was a frontier of surveillance during the Cold War, with both Soviet and American forces active in the region. The Nagatada port sighting fits into a broader pattern of maritime UFO encounters reported globally during this era. Unlike rural sightings, this incident carried significant weight. It occurred in an urban port, witnessed by dozens of credible observers and reportedly confirmed by radar. For researchers, the combination of human testimony and technical evidence makes it one of the stronger UFO reports from Japan in the 20th century. Sailors from Norway, fishermen in Brazil, and naval crews in the Pacific shared similar accounts. Luminous discs appeared over water, often near harbors or coastlines, moving with speeds and precision beyond known technology. In Japan, smaller fishing villages along the Sea of Japan occasionally reported glowing orbs or discs hovering offshore. Though few gained the attention of the Niigata case, the event's luminous quality, silence, and abrupt acceleration defied conventional explanation. No jet or helicopter from the 1970s could hover in complete silence and then accelerate out of sight in seconds. Yet, the story never reached the international audience that cases like Rendlesham or Belgium's Triangle Wave attracted. In Japan, however, UFO researchers still cite Nagatada as a cornerstone of the nation's modern UFO history. Those who witnessed the object have aged, and some have passed on. But among Nagata's older seafaring community, the story lives on. They recall the silence of that evening, how the glowing disk reflected on the Black Harbor water, and the sudden impossible flight that took it away. They remember how for a few minutes the entire port seemed to stop. Engines idled, conversations fell quiet, and everyone simply stared upward, sharing a sense of wonder. The official record remains silent, the Coast Guard never issued a statement, and radar logs from the era are sealed or lost. Newspapers that covered the event quickly moved on, leaving only traces of reporting in archives. But in the memories of those present, the event is etched as clearly as the shimmering reflection of light across the water that night. In the end, the Niigata port sighting stands as one of Japan's most enigmatic UFO cases. It was not a lone fisherman's tale or a fleeting flash in the sky, but a profound moment that continues to intrigue and mystify. Not an August afternoon in 1950, Nicholas Mariano was preparing promotional shots for the Great Falls Electrics baseball team at a quiet airfield in Montana. Not an August afternoon. A sudden flash of light caught his attention. Looking up, he spotted two silvery, round objects flying smoothly across the sky. With his camera ready, Mariana quickly tracked the metallic discs as they moved from northwest to southeast. His secretary, Virginia, stood beside him, also witnessing the unusual sight. In just 16 seconds, he captured a sequence that would become one of the most significant UFO documentations in American history. The film was extraordinary in its clarity. Frame by frame, two bright circular objects moved steadily overhead, defying conventional explanations. They didn't resemble planes, birds, or weather balloons. The sequence appeared remarkably stable. With no signs of camera manipulation, local newspapers soon reported the sighting, and the U.S. Air Force swiftly took possession of the film for analysis under Project Grudge. Mariana later claimed that when the film was returned, several frames, particularly those showing the most distinct images of the discs, were missing. This allegation sparked widespread suspicion about potential evidence tampering. The Air Force officially explained the objects as reflections from F-94 jet fighters in the area. However, many researchers who studied the footage strongly disputed this explanation. For dock workers, fishermen, and local residents who witnessed the event, something undeniably strange had occurred that evening. A structured, luminous craft hung in the sky, seen by many, and tracked by radar. It left no wreckage, no photographs, only lingering questions. When it departed, it did so with a speed and silence that defied logical explanation. Captured by Nicholas Mariana in the late 1940s, the footage showed unidentified objects moving across the sky in a manner that defied conventional explanation. Multiple UFO research community members and civilian analysts argued that the film depicted solid disc-shaped craft of unknown origin. The objects appeared too uniform, their shape too consistent, their reflectivity too steady. When compared to known aircraft in the area, the jets simply did not match the path or appearance of what Mariana had filmed. Over subsequent decades, the footage underwent repeated scrutiny, The Robertson panel, convened by the CIA in 1953, studied the film but ultimately dismissed it as inconclusive. Years later, the Condon Committee at the University of Colorado conducted their own review. Intriguingly, their photographic experts concluded that the objects were neither birds, balloons, nor traditional aircraft. They appeared genuinely anomalous. Mariana himself remained frustrated throughout his life. He maintained that the film had been altered and that missing frames would have revealed the discs in their clearest form. His secretary, Renee, consistently supported his account of the sighting. Neither sought publicity or financial gain from their extraordinary encounter. The film's endurance stems from its unique qualities: motion picture evidence shot in daylight, with multiple witnesses, and subject to decades of analysis. Unlike static photographs easily dismissed as hoaxes, the continuous movement of the objects made them more challenging to explain away. Researchers continue to revisit the footage, employing modern stabilization technologies and asking persistent questions. If these were jets, why do they look nothing like jets? The controversy surrounding the film remains as compelling as the imagery itself. Did the Air Force alter the reel to suppress clearer evidence? Were the objects truly advanced craft or merely misinterpreted reflections? The absence of those early frames, whether lost accidentally or deliberately removed, ensures the debate will never fully resolve. For the residents of Great Falls, the film became more than just a UFO sighting. It was a point of local pride, a moment when their community produced one of the earliest and clearest UFO documentations. More than 7 decades after its creation, the Great Falls film continues to intrigue audiences, having been restored and digitized for modern viewers. The film remains as mysterious now as it was in 1950, with discs moving steadily across the frame, unidentifiable yet undeniably present. While the film doesn't prove extraterrestrials visited Montana, it captures something real, unexplained, and enduring. At its core, the Great Falls UFO film is about persistence rather than definitive answers. Spanning just 16 seconds, it has outlived its creator and survived into the digital age as an iconic piece of UFO evidence. Whether showing reflections, jets, or something beyond our comprehension, the film refuses to fade into obscurity. Each replay confronts viewers with the same question that first struck Nick Mariana on that August afternoon. What exactly was moving through Montana's skies? The events of August 25, 1951, in Latch, Texas, a quiet college town on the flat South Plains prairie, marked the beginning of a remarkable UFO case. 3 Texas Technological College professors, Agberg, Dr. W.L. Ducker, and Dr. Tyle Ducker, Whit Robinson, were sitting outdoors on a late summer evening when something extraordinary crossed the sky. Above them, in complete silence, a formation of bluish-white lights swept across the horizon in a perfect V shape. The professors were immediately struck by what they saw. These lights glowed steadily, brighter than stars and moving faster than any bird or aircraft they could imagine. They counted between 15 and 30 objects, quickly ruling out meteors. Unlike meteor rock streaks, these objects glided together in a disciplined formation. As trained scientists, the men were cautious, but agreed they had witnessed something solid, structured, and unexplained. News of the sighting spread rapidly, and within hours, other Latch residents reported similar displays. Families on porches, campus students, and highway motorists all described arcs and crescents of glowing lights flying overhead. Some compared the objects to a flock of geese, but the comparison fell short. These lights moved too quickly, too precisely, with a brilliance that seemed unnatural. Over the following nights, the phenomenon continued. Repeatedly, residents looked skyward, watching groups of lights pass overhead in silence. Entire neighborhoods gathered outside, united by this extraordinary spectacle. The mysterious lights over the city captivated everyone. People stopped their cars, neighbors talked in hushed tones, and children stood wide-eyed. A sense of both wonder and unease united the community as the formations returned each night with strange regularity. Local professors were determined to understand the phenomenon. Armed with binoculars, they carefully observed the lights. Their observations were precise and compelling. These were not reflections or ordinary aerial objects. The lights moved at tremendous speed, held a consistent glow, and traveled in deliberate, controlled formations. On August 30th, 1951, the story took a dramatic turn. 18-year-old Carl Hart Jr. was in his backyard when the lights appeared again. quick thinking, he grabbed his Kodak camera and captured 5 consecutive photographs. When developed, the images revealed rows of luminous discs arranged in a clear V shape. Hart sold the pictures to the Loch Avalanche Journal, and they quickly spread nationwide. Life magazine soon reprinted them, transforming local sightings into a national sensation. These photographs provided physical evidence to support dozens of witness testimonies. Repeated analyses of the images followed. While skeptics accused Hart of fabrication, the negatives showed no signs of tampering. The exposures were genuine records of something extraordinary in the sky. Believers saw confirmation of the light's reality, while dismissing claims of mere imagination. The U.S. Air Force investigated through Project Blue Book, its official UFO study program. Officers interviewed Hart, the professors, and other residents. Their official explanation was straightforward. The lights were simply birds reflecting the glow of recently installed mercury vapor street lights. This conclusion satisfied almost no one. The professors vehemently objected, having observed the lights through binoculars. They noted no wings, no fluttering, no irregular motion. Birds, they argued, could not move with such speed or maintain such precise formations across the sky. Hart likewise rejected the explanation, standing by his photographs for the rest of his life. Independent analysts ultimately agreed with his perspective. Non-Cold War tensions gripped America in the early 1950s, a time when flying saucer reports were common but often dismissed as vague encounters. The Latch case stood out dramatically. Multiple nights of mass sightings, documented by credible scientific witnesses, captured widespread attention. Photographs became critical evidence, preserving a moment that defied conventional explanation. Local residents experienced something profound. Parents recalled children crying in fear as strange lights swept overhead. Neighbors stood together in stunned silence, witnessing an inexplicable event. Even trained professors, typically cautious and analytical, openly admitted seeing something extraordinary. Hart's quick reflexes and chance positioning allowed him to capture these moments on film, creating a lasting historical record. The images showed glowing discs in formation, simple yet powerful visual proof. Over decades, the Latch lights became a cornerstone of UFO research. Skeptics proposed explanations ranging from birds to atmospheric effects, but none fully accounted for all details. Believers emphasized the consistency of reports and the credibility of witnesses as compelling evidence. The lights never returned in their original form. Latch returned to its normal rhythms: cotton harvests, college classes, quiet evenings under the wide West Texas sky. Yet those present in August 1951 carried an indelible memory: the brilliance of unexplained lights and the moment their familiar sky became something entirely unknown. Today, the Latch incident remains suspended between skepticism and belief. Were these unknown aircraft misunderstood natural phenomena, or something beyond human comprehension? No definitive answer exists. What endures is the certainty that hundreds of people witnessed something truly extraordinary during those nights in 1951. Caught in film, the slick lights may never be fully understood, but their mystery carries a deeper significance. They unveil an unexpected truth about our world, that extraordinary moments can emerge from the most mundane settings. West Texas, 1957. On a cold November night, the prairie roads around Levelland stretched into darkness, seemingly unremarkable. Quiet highways were illuminated only by distant headlights and the soft hum of engines. Everything changed when cars began to stall and lights flickered out. Drivers gazed upward, encountering a glowing object hovering above the asphalt. Pedro Salcedo, a farm worker traveling with a friend along Highway 116, was among the first to witness the phenomenon. Around 11 p.m., he saw a bright light streak across the sky before a massive torpedo-shaped craft descended. Approximately 200 feet long and glowing bright blue, the object approached and immediately affected his vehicle. His truck's engine died and headlights went dark. Salcedo and his companion jumped out in terror. They described the object roaring overhead with intense wind and heat before vanishing into the night. Remarkably, their truck restarted immediately after the object's departure. Within an hour, another motorist experienced nearly identical circumstances at almost the same location. His car died abruptly as a glowing object descended, illuminating the road before disappearing and allowing the vehicle to restart. Over the next 2 hours, the Levin police station received at least 15 separate reports. Drivers across the area described consistent details, stalling engines, failing lights, and a hovering luminous object. While some described the craft as egg-shaped and others as cigar-shaped, all agreed on its brilliant, pulsating glow that transformed the landscape's color. Initially skeptical, Sheriff Weirkland decided to investigate personally. Driving into the reported area, he witnessed a light crossing the sky and felt his own engine falter. Though his car didn't completely stop, the experience profoundly affected him. The pattern became undeniable. Ordinary people, farmers, truck drivers, young couples, and even the county sheriff were united by an inexplicable encounter that challenged their understanding of reality. For the people of Loch, these nights would forever stand apart. Moments when silence and wonder gripped a community, and their world seemed briefly touched by the unknown. The Leveland incident stood out among UFO encounters due to its unprecedented physical effects on vehicles. Within a 48-hour window, the U.S. Air Force dispatched Project Blue Book officials to investigate. Unlike typical UFO reports that rely solely on eyewitness accounts, this case featured mechanical interference that was consistently reported. Witnesses described cars stalling precisely when an object was present and restarting immediately after its departure. This detail became critical for investigators. While the Air Force quickly concluded the event was caused by an electrical storm and ball lightning, their explanation failed to satisfy many. Witnesses challenged this assessment, pointing out there were no storms that night, and ball lightning typically lasts only seconds, not long enough to stall multiple vehicles across miles of highway. The incident quickly captured national attention, with newspapers running headlines about the Leveland flying saucer. In Washington, it was cited as a strong example of unexplained aerial activity, particularly noteworthy for its direct impact on machines. Local residents retained vivid memories of the event. One witness described how the craft's glow turned the highway as bright as midday, casting long shadows across the prairie grass. Another emphasized the terrifying silence after the engine died, the sudden vulnerability of being stranded in darkness, with an unknown presence overhead. Sheriff Clem, initially skeptical, never fully retracted his stance, but admitted to seeing something unusual. His testimony added credibility to what might have been dismissed as mere panic. The consistency of multiple witness reports within a narrow time frame set this case apart from isolated sightings. Decades later, the Leveland case remains significant in UFO research. Analysts highlight the electromagnetic interference as key evidence. While many UFO reports involve strange lights, few demonstrate such direct interaction with vehicles. The repeated engine stalling across different cars and witnesses suggests something beyond imagination or coincidence. The incident ultimately became a touchstone in UFO studies, challenging traditional explanations and leaving many questions unanswered. 1957 transformed ordinary Texas highways into something extraordinary. Drivers who would never have crossed paths suddenly shared a surreal experience that defied explanation. An unidentified object descended from the sky, causing engines to die and bathing the landscape in an otherworldly glow. Official records labeled the incident as ball lightning, but those who were present knew something more profound had occurred. No photographs or radar logs existed, only the powerful testimonies of frightened motorists and the eerie memory of stalled vehicles on a dark highway. The Leveland UFO case penetrated deeply into the American consciousness because it was more than a distant light. It was a tangible event that directly interrupted people's lives, forcing them to confront something beyond their understanding. The combination of physical disruption and consistent eyewitness accounts made it one of the most compelling UFO encounters ever recorded. For those who experienced that night, the prairie highways were forever changed. Something unknown had claimed those roads for a few hours, leaving behind only stalled engines, glowing skies, and unanswered mysteries above the Texas plains. A similar phenomenon would occur years later in Mount Vernon, Indiana. On an evening in October 1966, it began with a single phone call to the sheriff's office. A motorist reported glowing lights hovering above his car, pulsating with a strange rhythm before shooting upward and vanishing. Within an hour, multiple reports flooded the police switchboard. Farmers and drivers described similar experiences across the small Ohio River community. What made the Mount Vernon reports remarkable was their consistency. Witnesses spoke of bright spherical lights, often in pairs or trios, moving across the countryside. Some reported silent, hovering above fields, while others described impossible speeds, covering miles of sky in mere seconds. The color descriptions varied, but the core experience remained the same. Something inexplicable was happening in the night sky. The strange lights over Mount Vernon in 1966 arrived with an eerie consistency, bluish in hue. They displayed impossible aerial behavior, sudden stops, abrupt turns, and accelerations no known aircraft could replicate. Local residents watched with growing unease. Families gathered in yards, pointing upward at glowing orbs drifting silently above. One teenager later described the phenomenon as something that simply didn't make sense. Not planes, not meteors, but something hanging in the sky as if observing them. Sheriff's deputies investigated the unusual sightings. Deputy Harold Schultz reported a glowing object hovering over the Wabash River bottoms, moving without sound or wings. When he attempted to approach, the object darted away at tremendous speed, leaving him staring into the empty night. Another deputy confirmed similar lights near a stretch of farmland, noting how his radio briefly crackled with static as the object passed overhead. The phenomenon persisted for several nights, always emerging after dusk. Farmers noticed their livestock becoming restless, with dogs barking at seemingly empty skies moments before the lights appeared. At least 2 motorists claimed their cars briefly faltered near the hovering lights, though engines restarted without lasting damage. These accounts aligned with interference cases reported elsewhere, lending credibility to the Mount Vernon reports. The local newspaper, the Mount Vernon Democrat, ran cautious coverage, quoting both frightened residents and skeptical officials. Headlines spoke of strange lights over the town, while the sheriff's office logged multiple calls without offering an explanation. Speculation ran wild. Residents talked of Soviet aircraft, experimental U.S. jets, or visitors from beyond. In a small town of fewer than 10,000 people, the lights became the primary topic of conversation in diners, barbershops, and church gatherings. The Air Force, through Project Blue Book, eventually investigated. Their conclusion was predictable. The lights were simply aircraft navigation beacons and stars, distorted by atmospheric conditions. However, many locals remained unconvinced. Too many people had witnessed objects moving in ways stars and planes could not possibly move. The year was 1966, the same year as the famous Michigan swamp gas sightings that had embarrassed the Air Force. UFO talk was everywhere, and the Mount Vernon lights seemed to confirm widespread fears about what might be lurking in the night sky. The residents of Mount Vernon knew what they'd seen. Their written statements were clear. The lights were real, structured, and responsive. Though official channels closed the file, the memory remained vivid in the community. For some, the nighttime encounters became part of local folklore shared at family gatherings, a moment when the whole town looked up together. For others, the experience left an unsettling sense that something unknown had briefly visited their skies. Researchers have since revisited the Mount Vernon case as part of the broader 1966 UFO wave sweeping across the Midwest. Hundreds of reports emerged from Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, often describing similar glowing lights that hovered and moved in ways conventional aircraft could not. The incidents stood out because law enforcement officers documented their encounters. This wasn't just a passing curiosity. For a small town like Mount Vernon, these sightings disrupted the quiet rhythms of everyday life. Farmers, teenagers, deputies, and families shared the same experience. They stood together under the night sky, pointing upward with a mix of fear and awe. The lights never returned with the same intensity. Mount Vernon soon settled back into its quiet pace along the Ohio River, with the sightings filed away as identified phenomena. Yet for those who were present, the official label never quite fit. They remembered the pulsing lights, the surrounding silence, and the sudden acceleration that defied everything they knew about aircraft. Today, the Mount Vernon lights remain a footnote in national UFO history, but a vivid memory for those who lived through it. These sightings remind us that the most extraordinary mysteries sometimes unfold not over cities or military bases, but in small towns where the sky is wide, the nights are long, and the unexpected can suddenly interrupt the ordinary. A single evening in May 1950 would spark one of the most enduring UFO controversies of the 20th century. Paul and Evelyn Trent, a local farming couple, captured 2 photographs that would challenge perspectives about unidentified flying objects. The event unfolded when Evelyn was outside feeding chickens and spotted a large metallic object moving silently across the sky. She quickly called Paul, who retrieved his camera and snapped 2 photographs as the object moved eastward before vanishing from view. The images were remarkable. A saucer-shaped object with a curved underside and distinct dome appeared without wings, tail, or visible propulsion. At a time when the term flying saucer had only been in popular use for 3 years, these photographs embodied exactly what people imagined such a craft might look like. Unlike many who might seek immediate attention, the Trents did not rush to publicize their discovery. The film sat undeveloped for weeks, and when finally printed, they casually shared the photos with friends. Only after a local reporter learned of them did the images become widely known. This hesitation, researchers later argued, actually added credibility to their account. When the photographs were published, they quickly attracted the U.S. Air Force's attention through Project Blue Book. Analysts examining the Sumble negatives found no signs of trickery. The shadows matched the time of day. The object's size and distance seemed consistent with an aerial phenomenon, and the Trent's account remained steady under questioning. Skeptics proposed alternative explanations. Some suggested the object was a small model, perhaps a side mirror or hubcap suspended by a string. Others accused the Trents of staging the photos for publicity. Yet, despite decades of scrutiny, no conclusive evidence